Bruce Weber going to join us just a couple of minutes from now because it's college basketball season. And I'm driving in today, and I'd like to, by the way, start out with just a huge shout-out.
So which obstacle course were you on today, Jake?
Bingo. I'm driving in. I got up this morning. I had to do I had my routine physical. Thank you. Did not have to turn aside the cough, but everything's great.
Everything check out okay?
Blood pressure 108/78.
Nice.
Could not be more thrilled. Yes, I was thrilled.
Hell yeah. Let's go.
Currently, as I've mentioned, the old Jeep Grand Cherokee's he's on vacation because he's getting worked on. And
what's his name?
They're having to rebuild the engine. I don't have a name for my car, actually. I probably should. So I'm driving a rental. And I'm driving a rental. I go and I get my routine physical and everything's good. And I'm driving and I'm thinking about what we're going to do on the show today. And I'm thinking about the fact that the Horizon League tournament's going on. And I think we should get Greg Kampe on from Oakland because that guy's always fun. And they're a cool story. And they're coming to the Coliseum. And the Horizon League's based right here in Indy. So let's see if we can get him. And then I thought, I know you said Bruce Weber's going to be on. And it's very cool why he's got to come in and be a specific time, which is going to be in a couple of minutes because he has a very cool honor taking place today. And I thought that's perfect. And I thought about the Pacers game last night and no Tyrese Halliburton, and we need to get to that. And I thought about the fact Indiana's playing Ohio State coming up tomorrow, big one, and Purdue is playing tonight at Illinois, speaking of Bruce Weber and two teams that he's been involved with. And then Trey Hendrickson is a guy with 17 and a half sacks that might be available for the Colts, and that would work perfectly. And all these things are floating through my mind. And then I get double whammied with two things that break me out of my daydream. The first being all of a sudden I notice that my tire is going and I look down on the rental car and it says tire pressure low front right. And, of course, I've been driving as it stands right now on the Crater of the Moon National Park anyway, on any road in Indianapolis. And fortunately, I was very close to where I had rented the car. So I went back to my friends on the northeast side at Enterprise Rental Car and pulled in and said, look, I have a flat. I just had a physical. And like instantly in 2 seconds, they said, hey, not a problem. Here you go. We got another car ready to go. Could not believe how both accommodating and seamless that went. They were awesome, and I was extremely appreciative of it. So I get back now in the new rental car, and I'm driving it. I'm thinking about all these things, and then the other whammy hits me. The other whammy that wakes me up hits me, and the fact that, and I was driving, so I didn't see it at the time, truth be told, so the imagery here a little bit off. But I'm driving along, then I get to work, and I see the following on the X-Post Twitter. Do we have the breaking news sounder by any chance, Eddie Garrison? It's not necessarily breaking news because this actually came out just before the morning show ended, and I know they discussed this, but the following, which is, I think, I was surprised to read it. The following from Jim Irsay on social media X today. Quote, 14 losing seasons as we enter season 42 in Indy. Not, period, good, period, enough, period. 2 Super Bowl appearances, 1 win. Not, period, good, period, enough. Colts will be back. Our fans deserve better. Thumbs up and a football. Now, if you were really going to be semantically critical, you would say that going to be back to what? Because you just got done saying that the 42 years that they've been here have not been good enough. If you're semantically going to be critical, that's what you would point out. 1/3 of the seasons in Indianapolis have been losing seasons. The replies are interesting, and I'm very curious to hear from a number of people coming up later in the program when we open the phone lines up to talk about that, of your reaction to that from Jim Irsay. Do you see that as an owner that, as he has been established and I think trusted by the fan base as, that is very invested in the best of his franchise and has his ear to the pulse of the fan base? Or do you see it as an owner that you would look at and say, if that's the case, then why did, say, at the end of last season that just completed, did you not make the necessary changes? I think there are going to be a mixed bag of reactions to that. I think all of them are going to be interesting and fun to discuss. Interesting to discuss, probably more than fun to discuss, right?
Yes. I'm wondering how many memes are in the replies and how many nice replies there are, Jake. I wonder how many people are in support of what Mr. Irsay has to say.
I don't know. I mean, I applaud it. I mean, I applaud the fact of the transparency there, of the fact that in reality, and I guess this is either a credit to the Colts or a problem for the Colts. But one of the things in reality is the fact that I think most people, if you stopped them on the street and said, how many losing seasons have the Indianapolis Colts have since 1984? I think most people would guess it to be a much higher number than 14. Because it certainly feels like the first half of their time here, they were chasing it prior to Peyton Manning. But we will get into that, and there is plenty to discuss on today's show. You said we have Coach Weber, correct, Eddie? Joining us now on the always busy guest line, he is a favorite of this program and the listeners of it, also of those viewers of the Big Ten Network. We talked about the fact that Illinois and Purdue are playing tonight, a guy that knows both of those programs well. Bruce Weber joins us on the program. And, Coach, let me begin by saying this. It is my understanding that today or sometime this weekend, you are being inducted into, and you correct me if I get the terminology wrong, the Missouri Valley Hall of Fame. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we just had they had a breakfast honoring the inductees, and just a really proud moment for me to be included in that, and a great history in the Valley. People don't realize the second oldest conference of all conferences. The Big Ten is the oldest, and Missouri Valley. And the names, you're putting Wes Unseld, Oscar Robertson, Larry Bird. I mean, these people are all in the Hall of Fame. When I look at that book, and then just to be included with that group, it's special. So we get honored at the game with the noon game, and I'm fitting you in here between those two events.
Well, and so let's get right to this from a basketball standpoint. Before we get to the Big Ten, I do want to say this because I think you'll agree. I think the Missouri Valley, year in and year out, and certainly this leads to why it's a great honor for you, I think it's one of the best coached leagues in the country. I think top to bottom there is as good of X's and O's coaches throughout the Missouri Valley as anywhere you're going to find in college basketball.
There's no doubt about it. In my time, Dana Altman's going to win 800 games. Kevin Stallings' success at Vanderbilt, Coach Waltman at Indiana State. There's just been so many good coaches. Greg McDermott at Creighton still doing it. It's been a really good starting for coaches to get going. I always said it was a mini Big Ten, and I was fortunate. In our era, we were getting 2 teams in the NCAA tournament, 3 teams, 1 year, 4 teams. And obviously that's not happening in this day. So we were fortunate to be part of the golden years. And now it's almost like a minor league for the Big Ten. You talk about Gillespie and last year Domas and Lance Jones and, all those kids coming through these Missouri Valley programs that are, you talked about it, well coached. They've been in winning programs. They've been held accountable, and then they go to the Big Ten, and they've had really good success.
Okay, let's get to the Big Ten, Coach. Bruce Weber is our guest here on the program. When the Big Ten tournament winding down the Big Ten tournament underway after the regular season concludes, when you look at the season in general, and you look at the Big Ten right now entering into the final home stretch, what team to you, either positively or negatively, what team right now is playing a style or a rhythm or lack thereof that is least representative of what you would guess by looking at them in totality of the season, if that makes sense what I'm asking?
Well, I think it's just it would depend on the week, to be honest, because each team has had their struggles. I mean, you can go down the line except one, and the one that won it, the most consistent, Michigan State. And even they had the bad week where all the fans were jumping off the bandwagon when they lose the West Coast. So that week they would have been the team. Oh, they're not good enough. Well, now it's Michigan. Purdue had their week. Indiana's had a week. Illinois has had a stretch. Even Maryland has had, they went out and lost to Washington. Think about that. And so, but, it's just, I think it would depend on the week. Obviously this week, you'd say Michigan is the one that's kind of is struggling right now, and we'll see which tonight. You got the big game. Which team is going to be more consistent and step up. Purdue had their tough time. They came back. It always helps, as Matt said, to make shots. And then obviously Illinois hit. The Duke game's probably a low moment, but sometimes you need a low moment to wake up. And now they've got going again. I believe they have a lot of talent, good upside. Indiana, I think, has been real consistent here this last stretch, and even their loss to Oregon. I don't think that's a bad loss. They were 1 minute left. They're up, or 2 minutes left. They're up 1 point. Galloway hits the three, and they're up. And obviously, the last couple of minutes wasn't the best for them. And then if you look at who's playing the best, besides Michigan State, Oregon is on a 5-game winning streak. So after losing 5 in a row, and I had their game out there, and Dana said, I don't know if I can do this much longer. Well, if I talk to him now, he's probably fired up, ready for the tournament and the NCAA tournament.
Do you feel like, Coach, with Purdue, when Purdue went through that skid and then they turn around, they beat UCLA at home, which is a good win, and they've played well since. Do you feel like Matt righted the ship, so to speak? And if so, what was the difference? What did Purdue, if anything, do differently or tweak when they got back on the right side of things?
Well, it always helps to make shots. There's no doubt. It depends who you play and styles. Every team, I think, has some kind of Achilles heel, some kryptonite that, if you have to play against this style, you are going to struggle. Purdue has some things. If you have multiple guards that can score, if you have guys that can pressure Braden Smith and make it tough on him, it puts them in a bind. There's no doubt. And they ran into that a little bit. I forgot to even mention Wisconsin. I mean, shoot, I know they, lost at Michigan State, but, they've been playing as well as anybody. And they have 3 guards, sometimes 4, that can all score the basketball. So I think Matt went through, it was part schedule, part their guys, he's got 3 really good weapons. Beyond that, if they can get something from those other guys, that's going to be a key as they continue to have good success tonight, next week, and the following week in the NCAA tournament.
The Missouri Valley Hall of Famer Bruce Weber is our guest. Coach, I know you got a lot to get to here, so we'll let you go in just a second. I wanted to get 2 other quick ones in real quick. First off, Indiana, are they a better basketball team, even though Ballo and Malik Renew are both very good players? Is Indiana a better basketball team when they rotate those guys as opposed to lining them up side by side on the same possession?
In my opinion, yes. And I think there's times you can use both of them. It depends who you're playing. Obviously, Michigan's success with 2 bigs, Maryland's success with 2 bigs, they've had to. But I think when you look at Michigan, Wolf, is he really a big man, or is he a guard or a forward? And even Queen can come out from Maryland. And, Renew and Ballo, when you play them together, if they're both in that, they take that lane away, and it makes it tough. And even Mbako, when you add him to it, you got, to me, it's 3 big guys. Part of it is the defense, part of it's offense, who they can guard and can they stay in front of people. And then the other part is the offense and the space. Space is so important. I have loved that he's gone to the small ball lineup. He did it against Purdue. He did it, against Washington. He continued Oregon. When they play smaller, it seems like they're a better team. And to me, a lot of it is their defense, because they can pressure. They just pressured Purdue, out of the game in the second half. And then if you have that backstop behind them, follow blocking shots, Renew scoring inside, it makes it tough. So when they got that group, that small ball group, I think they got a chance to be pretty good.
Okay, lastly, Coach, oftentimes in the NCAA tournament, we see a team make a run that when they get out of league, they play a style that is so unique that teams that aren't used to them get blind. Syracuse has done this forever, right, with Jim Boeheim's matchup zone.
Yes.
So
yes.
Give me the team in the Big Ten that in the NCAA tournament plays a style that is so unique that non-Big Ten teams can be caught head on a swivel and be caught off guard by them, and therefore they have the potential to make some noise.
Are you saying Big Ten teams or teams that they'll have to play?
No, actually, give me one of each. Give me a Big Ten team with that potential, and then a team that you look at and go, man, I would not want to face them.
I would not want to face Auburn. That's my opinion. And Bruce Pearl, you can say what you want about him. He's got them playing hard. They got a big man. They have athleticism. They play hard. That's the team that, I really would, I would worry about, especially for Big Ten teams, style play. And Purdue went through it. Ohio State went through it. Playing them, and they had their struggles. But, I really think, I love Michigan State, and, they're playing different because they're playing 10 guys. They're playing with their defense, and last night was a little bit different, and I probably lost a little edge winning the championship, but they provide a whole different element than teams are going to see, and they, because of their defense, because of their bench strength, he's done a great job with that. I also like Wisconsin and Maryland's offense. They can score the basketball. They spread you. They get to the basket. They have that guard play. So I think that can be a problem for a lot of teams in the NCAA tournament.
Coach, you're the best. In the movie Wayne's World, there's a scene where they get backstage passes to Alice Cooper, and they're walking up to everybody showing them the backstage pass because they're so proud of it. I think you should do that with your Hall of Fame plaque and then just get free admission to any Missouri Valley athletic program the rest of your life.
I hope I can call somebody to get tickets, but if I have to bring my plaque, I'll do that. So, but it's good to be on, and looking forward to coming to Indy next week. It should be a great tournament. Man, the depth of the league is so good. I just, and the sad part, I know 3 teams aren't going to get there, but would you want to play Penn State right now?
I know. No, you're right.
It looks like they're not going to be able to get there. And there's, it's going to be, even Iowa last night, they gave Michigan State all they could handle, and that's a team that Northwestern is beating people. And, they might, Nebraska, if they lose to Iowa, they're people still have them maybe in the bracket, but they might not get to the Big Ten tournament. So think about the depth of the league and the quality of the league. It's been a great, good, fun season. So many buzzer beaters, so much excitement and close games, and you just, it's unbelievable. It's been fun, and that's why I think Indy next week is going to be a blast.
Weather's going to be great. The basketball is going to be great. The energy is going to be great. Bruce Weber typifies all of it. Coach, we appreciate it.
Thank you. So I can bring my swimsuit and swim outside next week?
That's right. Yeah, just walk around downtown in a Speedo. Well, you'll be the guy in the Speedo we'll be looking for.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Bruce Weber, again, the Missouri Valley Hall of Fame, which is awesome for his time at Southern Illinois, and then, of course, well known for his time on the staff at Purdue and as well Illinois. Listen, he's right about, and that's what I love about the tournament. I mean, Michigan State, we know they've been the most consistent, but, Auburn, yeah, I would not want to play Auburn in the tournament because they are so long, they are so fast. I mean, they are at a whole nother level. There's no question about it. And it's interesting too when he said, "Say what you want about Bruce Pearl." Keep in mind you've got the whole thing of the rivalry, and I'm trying to think of what staff that Bruce Weber would have been on at the time. But to give backdrop there, I think, and Bruce Pearl can flat out coach, okay? I mean, there is no doubt about it. And he is just nonstop energy. But Bruce Weber, and I've got to look, Eddie, can you look and see, he would have been actually, I think, an assistant at Purdue, but because Bruce Weber coached at Illinois, when Deion Thomas was a marquee player and a big-time recruit coming out of high school, I think in the class of 89 or 90. And Deion Thomas was being recruited by both Iowa and Illinois. And Bruce Pearl got in a lot of hot water because he was an assistant at Iowa at the time, and there was, I believe, a wiretapped or a recorded phone call that took place where Bruce Pearl was caught making allegations against Illinois. Deion Thomas ended up going to Illinois, but it created a massive rivalry and bad blood, not only between Iowa and Illinois, but certainly Bruce Pearl and Illinois. So for Bruce Weber to be in Illinois, I would assume, I'm not saying that that those two had head-to-head any sort of conflict amongst them, but I can certainly imagine that if you were on staff at Illinois after the fact, you heard plenty about Bruce Pearl, but the guy can flat out coach. And, you know, I met Bruce Pearl a couple of years ago at a Final Four doing Radio Row, and he came on, and I've said before, I mean, afterwards, I didn't know whether I wanted to run through a wall or take a shower, or both. Coached at Southern Indiana. People down there love him. People in Evansville love Bruce Pearl. But that Auburn team, man, I would think that playing Auburn would feel like kind of going through a car wash because they're just hitting you. You don't know whether it's the fans that are on or the things that are spinning on the side or the water coming down. It's just nonstop in the length and the athleticism that they have.
A team that I thought he would have mentioned was Alabama, just because
That's
of the
another
way
one.
they can score.
Totally.
Like, they're one of those teams that's like, remember the Houston Rockets with James Harden and Russell Westbrook? Or it wasn't Westbrook, it was Chris Paul and Victor Oladipo. They were jacking up so many threes, and they started this whole movement of layups or threes, and they started making the corner three such a popular thing in the NBA. You had PJ Tucker leading the league in corner threes, and I remember them making a big deal about that, and Harden was averaging a triple-double, almost dropping 50 every night, and that's how I view Alabama. Like, that's how I view how they want to play with Mark Sears and all those guys that they have that can shoot the basketball, and they've got some length too, and they're a team that I would not want to run into when they're clicking, because when they're clicking, they don't miss, and they can put up 100.
The thing about Alabama, I look at Nate Oates, and I'll be honest, why is he never mentioned for coaching like the Indiana job? And I know he's got a good job at Alabama, and he's got apparently a big buyout. But other than and I know the situation in the storyline with Brandon Miller was at the time, pretty saucy. But as time has gone on and passed, it appears as though, and maybe I'm speaking out of school as a passerby of that storyline, but it feels to me like, in fact, Alabama was kind of absolved of, and so too was Brandon Miller. I mean, he was not criminally charged with anything. It was an ugly storyline if you're not familiar with it. But Nate Oates, between the time he was at Buffalo and Alabama, I'm like, this guy can flat out coach. He might be one. I mean, if you're looking for a guy that you think you could get for 20 years that's going to win you 25 to 30 games a year, why is his name never mentioned with Indiana? I mean, Bruce Pearl's name comes up. Why not Nate Oates? Chris Beard, he comes up. Why not Nate Oates? And I don't think – I saw an article the other day from somebody saying that they think Chris Beard is somebody that is still a candidate. I'm willing to go on the air and say, look, I completely read that wrong, and I was wrong if Chris Beard ends up hired at Indiana. But I will still go on and say, of all of the coaches whose names you're going to hear, he is the one that I don't think Indiana is going to go far into the process with. I just do not believe that. Not that I have anything against Chris Beard. Not that I'm just going by what I'm told. By what I'm told from numerous people that don't know each other, but all are involved in some way indirectly with the process. I just have a hard time believing Chris Beard would be a guy that they're going to take a hard look at. All right, we're going to take a hard look at Jim Irsay and what he had to say. Not Jim Irsay himself, but his tweet. I want to know your thoughts on it. Are you, as a Colts fan, are you invigorated? Are you optimistic? And are you relieved to see that Jim Irsay has come out and said, look, it's just simply not good enough, the time that we've had in Indianapolis? Or are you fatigued by it of, well, you're the guy in charge. If it's not good enough, why are we going through the same thing for the 9th straight year? I want to know all of that, and we'll go back to tell you what he said, and I'll crunch you a little bit more to the numbers there that makes it even more peculiar next. Can I ask one question before we get into the Jim Irsay tweet?
You are always allowed to ask questions, Jake. It's your show, so.
I would like anybody to tell me if they have experienced this. And before telling me like, oh, you just don't know what you're doing or whatever else, I've gone and checked. I've Googled it, and yes, I know how to get into my settings on my phone and check all of the different things, like make sure that you have it under push and not fetch and whatever else. I did the latest iPhone update. Whenever you do that, doesn't something always go wrong?
Not for me.
So here's my question for anybody out there, and you can text me or tweet me your answer or your IT help here, okay? If you have an iPhone and you've done the latest update, since I did the latest update, I can't send any emails. I'm getting emails on my phone, but anytime I try to send any of them, I get a thing saying unable to send, and then at the bottom I have a thing that says like 2 unsent messages, but I can't get into those and see what they are again. And I've tried everything. I have gone into my settings. I have checked all of the appropriate things, allegedly. I have restarted my phone, all of it.
Let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
Have you logged out and logged back in of your email?
Well, that's the other thing. And then I started getting a thing saying I need to change the password again. And I'm like, I just did all this. But no, I have not but this just started happening yesterday. And I apologize if you're somebody that I email ever, because you might end up getting 17 emails from me. I have no idea. But if anybody has experience with that or has had the same issue or problem, text or tweet me. But speaking of phones, Jim Irsay with the Post. And let me read it again. This was sent at 9:48 this morning, so he did offer 12 minutes of talking point content for the guys on the morning show, and then we're picking up the slack here from there. Slack's the wrong word. We're the baton from there. This from Jim Irsay, and I want your thoughts or your reaction to this if you want to join the program at 239-1070. 14 losing seasons as we enter season 42 in Indy. Not good enough. 2 Super Bowl appearances, 1 win. Not good enough. Colts will be back. Our fans deserve better. Couple of things here. I think if you look back at the history of the Colts, 14 losing seasons in 42 years, shockingly, actually feels low. Crazy as that sounds. It feels like in your mind you think to yourself, it's been more than that, right? They've had more losing seasons than that because historically speaking, it seems as though from 1984 to 1998, every season was a 3-13 season. Now, that wasn't the case. But when you look at it, this is the thing about that makes it jump out even more. The seasons that they were not a losing season. 89. Okay, well, I'll even go back to 87. They were 9-6. That was also a strike year where they went, I believe, 2-1 in the scab games. 88, they were 9-7. 89, they were 8-8. 92, they were 9-7. 95, they were 9-7. 96, they were 9-7. And then you get into Peyton Manning, and obviously you're off and running, right? 15, they're 8-8. 16, they're 8-8. 21, they're 9-8. 23, they're 9-8. So there are like 8 or 9 seasons there that were within a game of a losing season, or 2 games, within 2 games of a losing season. So that number could easily be 50% of the time that they've been in Indianapolis. But I think the question that a lot of people have would be this, and that is, in the Chris Ballard era, it has been largely, if not sub 500, which it has not been because you only have, 2 years in there, but very 500-esque, very mediocre, very average. And if it's that average, then why if Jim Irsay is just now coming out and saying this is not good enough, this is not good enough. Well, if it's not good enough, then why has there not been change over the course of now entering year number 9? And furthermore, if you are somebody who applauds the fire of Jim Irsay or the displeasure of Jim Irsay, where was that at the end of the season? Where was that when you had a coach that publicly called out your franchise quarterback that your general manager had put all the eggs in the basket of? Where was that when you were fairly stagnant throughout free agency or didn't draft positions that many people felt would improve your roster where you were in desperate need of help? I like it. I like the fire. But at the same time, where has it been? And why now? Hey, Jake, if Irsay was serious, Ballard would be gone after 8 years of mediocrity. It's hard to argue that. I'm not calling for anybody's job. I'm not sitting here saying a guy needs to be fired. But I do think that when it comes to sports, it is very fair to look and say, but why is somebody still around? This seems inconsistent. Jake, Irsay's not good enough tweet is just a refurbished version of his all chips in speech, where in all honesty, nothing's going to change. Ballard loves to keep the team irrelevant. Yeah, I don't think Ballard loves that.
In. Period.
It's the period that I love the best there. I don't think Ballard, I know that they're being facetious. Ballard hates for the team to be irrelevant, but they are. That's the thing that is disappointing. It is so surreal for me to think, and I know that I reference this reference point a lot and maybe even too often, but I still, two of the most surreal moments of my life, one of them was, and it's hard to believe it's been 13 years ago, one of them was walking through downtown Indianapolis when the Super Bowl was here and seeing all of the people downtown and a Bud Light hotel and all this other stuff and thinking the Super Bowl of the NFL is being played in Indianapolis, Indiana. I never would have guessed that growing up here. It was very cool. And the other thing that was very surreal to me was going into the old Cowboy Stadium in Irving, Texas, in Texas Stadium, and going in and seeing all of these fans. Had to be 5,000 fans 3 hours before kickoff, all lined up against the rail. And T.O. is out warming up in a full, Under Armour outfit. And I'm thinking, gosh, everybody's here to see this incredible, physical specimen of Terrell Owens. And then realizing that all of those people were gathered to watch the warm-up of the Indianapolis Colts because they wanted to see Peyton Manning and they wanted to see Edgerrin James and they wanted to see Marvin Harrison. And I do think that, and this is why there's a reason why that post from Jim Irsay relates to that exact moment and why it is, in my opinion, a positive. Because I think we might be witnessing an epiphany, which I'll explain in just a couple of minutes. And then Greg Kampe going to join the show, the head coach at Oakland. They're on their way. Awesome personality. We got confirmation he's going to call in around 1:30, right?
Yeah, I remember last year when we had him on the show and he was mentioning the whole NIL deal and couldn't pay I think it was Trey Townsend, his star player, he goes, I can't pay him $150,000.
That's right.
So he's going to go to some D1 school.
And that's exactly what happened, right?
Went to Arizona.
He's going to join us in about 40. But when we come back, how that moment that I saw of all those people at Texas Stadium lined up from Arkansas and Mississippi and Oklahoma and Texas there to see the Colts, why that now led to the epiphany that Jim Irsay had earlier, I'll explain. So here's the thing about the Jim Irsay post. It does seem to be, and I get it. I mean, I understand that at the end of the year, you're in the locker room, your team just played its final game of the season, so there's a lot of probably emotion and, whatever that goes into all of that. But I'm going to play for you again, for those that have forgotten, which would include me to a great extent, his comments to the team at the end of the season when they finished at 8-9, a losing record, by defeating, I believe it was the Jacksonville Jaguars, was it not, Eddie, to finish the regular season at home? This is Jim Irsay.
In overtime.
That's right. This is Jim Irsay talking to his team at the end of the season.
Obviously, we're disappointed, but we are 1-0 in 2025, and we have a lot to work to do. But we're still proud of the effort you guys put forward. Let's find a way back to our greatness. That's what my goal is, and I, as you guys are the same as me, we're committed, to winning. And so far, I know this year's been a disappointment, but I'm proud of you guys that you fought back and won in overtime to get us to 8-9. Very proud. I wish, we could have a couple different plays. Could have been a different year, but we will work hard, and we certainly appreciate you guys.
Okay. At the time, I think there were a lot of people that felt like that was him saying that there was a complacency of 8-9. When you go back to the comment that somebody just made and that moment that I saw in Texas Stadium where the Colts had people from one of the fan base area of one of the richest, most tradition-laden, sexy, relevant franchises in the NFL and the Dallas Cowboys. And you had fans that normally would be there to see the Dallas Cowboys and the star on the helmet and everything that goes with Dallas. And those fans were lined up to watch Peyton Manning and Edgerrin James and Marvin Harrison. And Jim Irsay loved it, as he should. As this city did, as they should. And one thing that happens as you do get older is it's the opposite of like dog years. When you get older, a 5-year period actually feels like a year to you. And it seems more recent than it is. I think somebody pointing out that Chris Ballard has this franchise irrelevant. I think there's a level of truth to that. I don't mean in Indianapolis. My gosh, it would be the worst thing for our business for the Colts to be irrelevant. I mean, we want – listen, our job is to objectively opine and report and assess and analyze what goes on within the pro sports franchises and college franchises here in town. That's our job. So we don't have a rooting interest. We don't wear pom-poms or wave pom-poms and wear blue and white up in the press box. But nobody is rooting for them to do poorly because it's in the best interest of everybody in this city. I love when the Colts are doing well. But I think that if you go outside of the state of Indiana and you stop random sports fans on the Las Vegas Strip or in O'Hare Airport or at the Magic Kingdom in Orlando and you say, name 4 NFL franchises, go. There was a time when the Indianapolis Colts would have received a lot of votes in that because they had the most marquee player, and then after that, the most soon-to-be marquee player playing for them in the National Football League. Those days are long gone. And they are, in fact, nationally speaking, irrelevant. How often do you hear them talked about on national television other than the fact that one of their former players has a show outside of that one? People are always talking about what's going on with the Jets, what's going on with, for that matter, even the Bears, but more so, clearly the Chiefs because they're winning. Clearly, the Eagles, even though they just won the Super Bowl, probably aren't even in the top 4 or 5 of teams discussed. But the Indianapolis Colts now, on a national standpoint, have fallen the way of probably in most markets, the Carolina Panthers or the Miami Dolphins or the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, do you hear a lot of Arizona Cardinals? As irrelevant as a franchise can be in a dominant league, the Colts are, in fact, somewhat irrelevant, right? And I think that Jim Irsay, for a long time, was unaware of that because he was still living in that moment that I'm talking about. He still felt like, I mean, why do you think it is this year? I found it peculiar. While I understand it, and I know fans loved it, and I appreciate that, and I respect it, I found it peculiar that this year the Colts did a massive celebration at the Murat for the 19th anniversary of something. Not the 20th, just the 19th year. And the consistent Ring of Honor inductions. But you've gone through all the waves now, right? And maybe you're now going to have even more of a wait for Reggie Wayne to get in the Hall of Fame. For Robert Mathis, who I don't think is going to get into the Hall of Fame. Vinatieri is going to get in, so you have that. But in terms of the things that Jim Irsay took pride in from a national standpoint of being the calling card of his franchise, they are now becoming objects in mirror that are further back than they appear. And I think he's finally seeing that. And I think that now that we've gone through the wave of all of the cycles and all of the things, it's kind of like at Christmas time. You have your big celebration at Christmas, and you're totally in the mood for the holidays, and you're like, well, we still have another week to get ready for New Year's, and everybody's saying happy holidays, and we didn't get together with Aunt Linda and Uncle Bill, and so we're doing that on Thursday. So it's like it's an extension of Christmas, so that's cool. And then, oh, wait a minute, and then we have New Year's, and then I forgot, we always do Cindy's family's New Year's dinner on January 2nd. So we're extending the traditions. We're extending the celebrations. And then once those are over with, you're like, man, we're kind of out of things to like live in the moment of the holidays. The Colts, in terms of the era of their greatness, they've now gone through all of the different things to live in that, and they're standing around like John Travolta in the meme, looking around like, well, now what? And the now what is you're 8-9. That's where you are. I just think he had the epiphany of realizing, you know what? Maybe we aren't. Maybe, in fact, that comment is correct. Jake, I think Irsay just needs to be truthful with himself. How many pieces would the Colts have to make, or moves would they have to make to become remotely close to making the playoffs? I think making the playoffs and being competitive in the playoffs are two different things. I don't think they're very far off from making the playoffs. I mean, Houston made the playoffs. But did anybody think Houston was going to be competitive in the playoffs? When you look at Kansas City, you look at Philadelphia. And yes, those are the top two teams in the league. I get it. They're in the Super Bowl for a reason. But then you look at Buffalo. You look at even San Francisco a year ago when they were healthy, and you see how quickly it can go away for you. But those teams all have playmakers in space. They all have speed. The Colts don't. The Colts seemingly, more often than not, I think if you were to ask this fan base, they feel like now it is a franchise that while people love them and want to see them do well, it's a lot more about making sure and planning and marking on your calendar the event to celebrate 19 years since a Super Bowl than it is to talk about how you're going to get to the next one. And it seems to me like Jim Irsay finally had the epiphany of, it's big boy time now, we got to get going. But is it window dressing? Is it lip service? It feels like it could be if you're not making the change. What changes are you going to make? Now's the time to find out, because you're entering into free agency, and there's a big one in terms of free agency that now I'm looking at the odds. I'm looking at the odds before me of a guy that we mentioned earlier that had 17 and a half sacks this past season, has 77 in his career, is 30 years old, meaning there's probably a little bit of gas left in the tank, and is available now. And somebody just sent me the Vegas odds, which we know are all knowing, for the very next team for a guy with 17 and a half sacks. And you don't have to scroll very far I'll tell you what the Colts' odds are of landing, at least according to Vegas, which, as we know, is all-knowing. Trey Hendrickson, where he may end up next, seems like a good fit for the Colts, but at what cost? We will discuss that. And Greg Kampe, Oakland head coach in 35. You ever seen the movie Falling Down, Eddie?
No.
It's kind of an underrated flick.
Chick?
What's that?
Chick flick?
Definitely not. The antithesis. Michael Douglas plays a dude that is just like your everyday dude, and he loses his gig, and then he just has a meltdown. And it's like the day in the life of it. I mean, it's a tense drama. I mean, there are kind of funny scenes in it. But I was watching it the other day.
Kind of like when you forgot your combine credential last year.
No, I was very calm, cool, and collected with that. I can promise you.
Ooh.
I was watching it the other day, and the whole time I was like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm certain, I know that have I interviewed Michael Douglas before? This is weird. And then it hits me. Boom. Greg Kampe, the head basketball coach at Oakland, who's one of the great personalities in college basketball. I mean, people love him. He's great. He's always fun. He's a funny dude, and they're getting ready to come. Oakland had kind of an upset last night against Milwaukee. They're coming to the Horizon League tournament at the Coliseum. Those games are Monday. They play at 7 o'clock on Monday against Robert Morris, who's the number one seed in the Horizon League. But, I thought I would love to get his thoughts on IU Indy and the job Paul Corsaro did, and just overall, because we talked a year ago about the challenges of that league and NIL, and then I thought maybe I can even ask him if anybody's asked him if he sounds like Michael Douglas, or maybe I'm the only one that thinks that. Have you seen Fatal Attraction?
No.
Oh, there's a scene in that movie that is pause button.
Really?
Oh, yes. I'll simply leave it at that. I'm going to, if you think about it, Eddie, you had not seen Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I told you about that. It's changed your life, right? You've watched it. How many times have you seen Fast Times now?
6.
And you pause it each time at the same time. JMV has the shirt of the paused moment in Fast Times. There's an equal pausable moment in Fatal Attraction. I will simply tell you that. Trey Hendrickson, the odds for the next team that he will play for, okay? This is according to
Bovada, let me guess.
I'm looking here to see which, I get these sent to me. Should I say which one this is from? I guess, right?
Doesn't matter to me.
Sportsbetting.ag. I think it's one of the Vegas apps. Anyway, here we go. Would you like to guess, Eddie Garrison, the team that is the front runner, according to the Vegas odds, for landing dynamic Cincinnati Bengal most recent pass rush specialist Trey Hendrickson, who had 17.5 sacks this year, and I think he had a couple against Indy, didn't he?
Probably.
Go ahead. Your pick.
I was trying to see if from our numbers game last year to see if I had like a horse like galloping or a horse neigh or something, but I'm going to go with the Indianapolis Colts.
No, they're not the odds-on favorite.
They don't know what they're talking about then. It's got to be Chicago number 2 then.
Chicago is,
1.
in fact, number 2 at 3-1.
I was about to say Chicago should be 1. It should be Chicago, Indianapolis 1, 2. I don't care what the order is.
The Green Bay Packers,
yeah, that makes no sense.
At 5-1 are 3rd. The Atlanta Falcons at 6-1 are 4th. The New England Patriots at 9-1 are 6th. But pulling in 5th at 7-1, the Colts of Indianapolis.
Colts should be number 1. I'm sorry. They're wrong.
But let me ask you.
Okay.
So you believe that are you saying that because you think it's the best fit, or because you believe that the Colts are going to make an effort to acquire him?
Yes to both, and not to mention his best games and his best careers have come underneath Lou Anarumo, who is now in Indianapolis. He's had back-to-back 17.5 sack seasons. He's been in Cincinnati for 3 years. He would have 3 straight double-digit sack seasons if he doesn't get hurt in one game, misses it, and then they have the DeMar Hamlin situation on Monday Night Football, so he got shorted 2 games there out of the 17-game schedule. He would have 5 consecutive double-digit sack seasons if that were the case. And the last time, Jake, that the Colts had a player record double-digit sacks in back-to-back years, do you know that? Trivia question.
Say it one more time.
The last Colts player to have back-to-back seasons with at least 10 sacks.
No.
That would be Dwight Freeney.
I was going to say Freeney or Mathis would be.
And he did it 3 straight seasons from 2008 to 2010.
I mean, again, you're talking a long time ago, right? By the way, I was wrong. I don't know why I was thinking Fatal Attraction. Basic Instinct. Have you seen Basic Instinct with Michael Douglas?
No.
That's the one with the, thank you, Tim Neiman. Basic Instinct is the one with the very pause button moment.
The Colts have only had 3 players record 10 sacks since 2010.
And one of them was...
Can you name them?
Okay. Go with that's a great trivia question. Give me the question one more time.
The Colts have only had 3 players record 10 sacks or more in a season since 2010.
Okay. Did 3 different men or 3 times it's happened?
3 different players.
Okay. Robert Mathis?
Yes, he did it twice.
Okay. So you're saying there is one other...
There are 2 other players that did it.
Unique Ngakoue?
No.
I'm trying to think here because there was one that was here briefly, right?
Yes.
Had a good year and then was gone, right?
Yes.
It's going to drive me nuts.
He was a vet. had ties with Chris Ballard at his previous stop, I believe. Yeah, he did, definitely.
Oh, came from Kansas City.
Correct.
Yeah, first name starts with a J.
Uh-huh.
I mean, hit me.
Last name is a team that's in the division of the Colts.
Yeah, I mean, just
Justin Houston.
Justin Houston, yes.
Yep.
Okay.
And then the third player?
Justin Houston was the one that I was thinking of because I knew there was somebody that did it kind of as a one-off.
This would be described as a one-off for sure.
Boy, Unique Ngakoue was one, right? Or was not?
Mm-mm. He only had 8.
Hit me with the last one.
Eric Walden.
Yeah, that's pretty much a one-off, right? He was part of that huge free agency class, obviously, right?
If you're listening, take notes. That might be a trivia question later when we have to give away Pantera tickets.
We do have Pantera tickets to give away. That's going to be on September 5th, by the way, at Ruoff Music Center. To me, Eddie, if you were to look at Trey Hendrickson, does he feel to you like necessity or luxury? In other words, if the Colts are to map out the areas of need and where they're willing to spend money to shore holes, is pass rush one of those? Are you? It's kind of like if you're shopping for stuff in your house, you go to Costco, and you walk in and you leave Costco and you've got an unbelievable entertainment center. And somebody's like, I didn't know that you were in the market for the entertainment center. And you're like, well, I mean, I had a decent one, but I could not pass on the price. Is that what we're talking here? If you were to make a list of the Colts' needs, where does pass rush actually fall? And are they creating here a need?
I think it's still a need. I don't think it's the top need, obviously. You need tight end, corner, safety, and offensive line depth. But, Jake, they have, like we just laid out, they've had 3 players since 2010 record at least 10 sacks, and they haven't had a player outside of DeForest Buckner that scares a defense on that defensive line. Like, you hope Leatu Latu can develop into that, but if you add a guy like Trey Hendrickson, it makes the other teams have to game prep more for your defense.
Okay, the other question is this.
Not to mention, Hendrickson's a guy that will go out there and play almost most, if not every snap. I'm tired of the whole rotation thing that they do, and, you know, we're going to play Quiddy on the rundowns and then Latu go out there on the pass downs. No. If a guy can play almost every snap and he's good, I don't care. He needs to be on the field.
The other thing that I think is going to be, I'll use the word challenge for lack of a better word. The other thing that I think is going to be an obstacle or simply interesting, and I understand this. Chris Ballard is entering year number 9.
Mm-hmm.
Ballard has, and every football guy seems to have this in common. Every one of them. You could show me the general manager of the Detroit Lions or the Denver Broncos or the Washington Commanders, or you could show me a coordinator at a high school in Concord, New Hampshire, Flagstaff, Arizona, or Minot, North Dakota. And all of them, when you talk to them, will say, you know, the one thing football that I like and that I take pride in is I build in the trenches, because that's where the game is won. The game is won in the trenches.
Yep.
I mean, it's great to have, a dynamic playmaker, but I like to have depth in the trenches. Every football person takes pride in knowing that that's the area where they all think that they're the only one that knows how to build in that area.
Yeah.
Chris Ballard, from the time that he's become the general manager of the Colts, the one thing that he has preached probably more than any other, if you were to track his press conferences, if you were to log and write down and keep in columns the points that he makes in interviews or radio, whatever it might be, I would bet you that talking about the offensive and defensive line are the areas that he has talked about, prided himself on, harped on more than any other area of the roster. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, there is an element that comes into play called human nature. I don't blame him for this. I don't hate him for it. I understand it. but I think it's a reality. And that is Chris Ballard, for being somebody who has routinely hung his hat on the fact that he is a guy that can build from the inside out a roster, then what does it mean if he then goes out to get his best player in the trench being one that he had to go outside to get? He already did it once with the Forrest Buckner via trade.
Mm-hmm.
But now to go and do the same thing, is it in his mind somewhat of a white flag of admitting that the routine and repeated efforts that he has made via the draft to shore up that need and that necessity for the football franchise, you then have to go to your owner and say, you know what, I actually need to spend a lot of the cap money on this. Well, but what about the guys that you drafted there? What about the guys that you said, Leatu Latu or Kwity Paye or Dio's a little bit different, but well, yeah, and those guys need more time, but this guy's ready to go. Well, but you told me over the last 8 years that this is the area where you can most be trusted.
Mm-hmm.
So does that cause him or give him hesitancy to go out and get the player? I'm saying it rhetorically, but that's the one thing that I think you cannot overlook.
At the end of season press conference, he seemed to defend and like what he saw from the pass rushers and the defensive line, and then he kind of went back on it a little bit at the combine and with the morning show with Jeff, Kevin, and Andy, or not Andy, but James, mentioning about how the production wasn't there like it was in the previous year. And I think it's just because they don't have anybody that can consistently win up front. Like, Latu led the team in pressures last year as a rookie, and he hit a rookie wall the last 5 weeks of the season. If Latu's your best player in year number 2 as a young and up-and-coming player, hopefully, then I think you have a major problem. And if Ballard goes out and does, pony up and pay Trey Hendrickson whatever it is he wants and, trade a second-round pick, a third, and Kwity Paye or whatever the case is, then I think it's him just admitting that, hey, I have failed and I have struggled at drafting this position and getting it right. I'm going to go out and get a guy who's been the best pass rusher the last 2 seasons.
Do you want to know one area where clearly I was wrong?
What's that?
I said at the beginning, obviously I was wrong. I said at the beginning of the year, I really believed that Leatu Latu was going to be the defensive rookie of the year.
Right.
I still think he has it in him. I mean, obviously it's 1 year, right? I think Latu, but boy, I mean, when you look at some of the yes, at the time he was so happy to get what he thought was the best pass rusher in the draft. And it was a swing and a miss, right? I mean, I shouldn't say that. Leatu wasn't a swing and a miss. Calling him the best pass rusher in the draft was probably a swing and a miss. That was probably a misassessment.
Mm-hmm.
But he, you can't write a guy off after a year. I mean, he may be – I think that we are just a little bit scar-tissued in this market because of the fact that, like a Kwity Paye, who's a nice player, but not what we were sold. You know what I mean? Not what we were told was going to be the case. Nice player. But, is Kwity Paye – the bigger question I have is this, Eddie. How many guys, as we get to go into free agency, how many Colts players right now, if they announce tomorrow that they are on the free agent market, how many players do the Colts have that people would line up for? How many players do the Colts have that would make more money right now going elsewhere because somebody would pay them more than what the Colts are?
Dio, probably. Will Fries, potentially.
Correct. I don't mean in the free agent class.
It.
I'm saying in general. How many that's the thing you have to look at, the way this team was built. How many players on the Colts roster right now are players that are coveted by more than half the league?
So are you saying that these are players that would start on another team if they weren't here?
Yes.
I think you're looking at Nelson, you're looking at Ryman, you're looking at Pittman, Downs, Taylor. Maybe Jalen Jones, Zaire, Buckner, Stewart, Latu
that
probably, Kenny. Yeah.
That many you think?
Yeah.
See, I'll disagree. I think they have a lot of guys that are guys. I think they have a lot of guys that you think that because they put up numbers here, but if they went elsewhere, would not be the starter. I mean, Zaire Franklin, sure. Okay, fine. But I think there are a lot of teams, and he's been a good player here, don't get me wrong, but how much of that is system?
I mean, you could say that about any player. Like, look at Brock Purdy. You had Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and you look like the MVP, and next thing you know, he doesn't have him for most of the year.
I understand, but
looks like crap.
But what I'm saying is I think if this was a roster that was made up of a bunch of players that would be coveted elsewhere, they'd be beyond 8 and 9.
But when you don't have the main position right, Jake,
there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of truth to the fact that it comes down to the quarterback play. No question about that. But I'm curious whether or not, because to an extent, going out and paying top dollar for a pass rusher is a little bit of a white flag wave. And it just depends on whether or not Chris Ballard feels he's got to win right now or whether or not he still gets himself more time. I mean, that's the challenge. By the way, right now, over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, Women's Big Ten Tournament. Indiana leading USC. That game, where are we in that game, Eddie? Is that
third quarter, halfway through?
Mid-third, Indiana. Terry Morin's team right now leading second-ranked, 17-1, 26-2 overall, USC by a point. And we'll see what happens with that. Last night, by the way, we didn't talk about it. We will get to it now. Tyrese Halliburton was out for the Pacers in Atlanta, taking on the Hawks. And I'm beginning to think this more and more. Eddie, feel free to weigh in and tell me if you disagree with this.
Okay. It was a left hip flexor strain. Carlos says he's day-to-day.
Talking about Tyrese Halliburton.
That is correct. Mathurin missed his fourth consecutive game with that left wrist soreness, sprain, whatever the classification is.
Here is my thought on the Pacers. Halliburton, in the last couple of weeks, we have seen Halliburton at his best. Maybe it is an anomaly to expect and anticipate that night in and night out. Maybe what we're seeing is you are expecting, kind of like somebody said yesterday with Sam Darnold. You know, can you rely on that as the general rule? I don't know that.
Was it Paul the Mailman?
I think it was Paul the Mailman that pointed that out. Giddy Paul.
Yeah.
We have two Paul the Mailman.
That's right. The director of giddiness.
That's right. With Halliburton, though, when he is playing at that level, the Pacers' offense operates on efficiency. And it operates in a way that when Halliburton is going, everything feeds off that. He gets others involved. It opens up his outside shooting. He literally is the straw mixing the drink. And when Halliburton is at his best, the entire offense is at its best. And I have said there are oftentimes two kinds of games for the Pacers. There are Halliburton games, and there are Siakam games. And last night, with no Halliburton out there, was a Siakam game. Now, what I'm about to say, I'm not saying is a uniform blanket statement, but I think it happens more often than not.
We've also had some Turner games mixed in, too.
Yeah, I mean, there are obviously other, but in terms of games where you look at it and you go, okay, one guy had 31 and everybody, nobody else was over, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm talking about games where it goes through a certain player.
Yeah.
When things have to go through, when Halliburton is not there and things have to go through Siakam's game is more of an isolation, back to the basket, 3 dribbles to set himself up style. And so when the game is a Siakam game, last night was a Siakam game.
Mm-hmm.
A Siakam game, their offense, it grinds their offense down to the point where they don't operate with the same fluidity that then jumpstarts everything that they want to do in terms of their identity, both in offensive efficiency and in transition, like you get when it's a Halliburton game. I'm not saying that you're not happy to have Siakam. Do not get me wrong. And I'm not saying that Siakam's not a guy that can be we're going to ride this guy with the hot hand and carry us to victory. We've seen that is absolutely a possibility and something that can be done. But more often than not, I just think that the Pacers, the easiest way to say what I'm saying, when Siakam is the focal point of your offense throughout the course of a game, I think you become easier to defend in totality than when Halliburton's your focal point. Because when Halliburton's your focal point, you got things running on all cylinders, and with Siakam, it gets a little more narrowed down on what it is that you're trying to do.
You could be right. I mean, the sample size, that was only the second game without Tyrese. It's hard for me to say one way or the other in agreement or disagreement. But the fact that they were missing both Tyrese and Benedict Mathurin last night was very detrimental to them, because I thought the offense really stalled when it was just Nembhard out there or just TJ McConnell, because Rick Carlisle likes to have two ball handlers on the floor at all times. Like, that's why it is Nembhard and Halliburton starting and not Nembhard or Halliburton and Mathurin, because the ball moves better and it pops. It's always moving. They want to lead the league in passes because it keeps them in their style of basketball, of that unpredictability and just the chaotic nature of read and react that it presents. And last night, with only having two, it turned them into an offense I think that they aren't really conducive to playing in, which fits what you were describing there when it comes to Pascal Siakam, because you have to slow it down. You kind of have to grind out possessions to try to get clean looks offensively. And if you don't have multiple guys out there that can handle the basketball, whether that's drive and kick and, just being able to create a little bit offensively, it's going to make it challenging for them.
Yeah, I mean, he had 35, right? So obviously the guy is a great player, don't get me wrong. And Nesmith continues to play. Nesmith I just love, because what do I always say, Eddie, about Nesmith points?
Those are those unaccounted for points that
correct
win you games.
They are not designed to go through Nesmith necessarily. But if you, like I said, you look at it, and I just think that with, Toppin, even Bryant, Shepard, those are guys that you're used to getting more inflow looks when you have a Halliburton game. And last night was not one. Now, I also think I didn't get overly dismayed by Halliburton not playing, because, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know how severe the injury may be, but at the same time, when you look around the league and you look at players that there's a lot on the shoulders of, it is not uncommon for players during back-to-backs, and in particular during the maybe even like the first half of back-to-backs or whatever it may be, and I know people hate hearing it. I get it. But in terms of the load management. But Halliburton, when you look at how significant and important he is to them when he is 100% healthy. And so I think you're going to err when you have back-to-backs like you do. I think you're going to err on the side of caution of a load management. And I know people don't want to hear that, and I totally understand and respect it. And you can tell me all you want, like, yeah, but I go to work every day, etc. Look, your job is not dependent upon your physical conditioning. And yes, Tyrese Halliburton, there's no reason he shouldn't be in the best physical shape of anybody on planet Earth, or anybody. I mean, LeBron James, any of them. But part of how you do that when you're having to play at that level of physicality and exert that level of energy and go through that level, and yes, I get it. They're traveling. Look, NBA teams, they're not getting to the airport and checking the board and going, hey, we're delayed. Let's go over and get an Annie Ann pretzel. We're delayed. Hang on. Call the travel agent and find out if there's an alternate flight. Maybe if we can fly into Cincinnati, that's close. We'll rent a car and drive home because there's a delay. For what? Storms in Texas, and we're flying through. We got a layover in Dallas, so it's not even a problem here. We're in Phoenix right now, but there's problems in Dallas, so that backed us up because we're waiting on a plane that's coming from Boise. They ain't doing that. And once they get on the plane, they're not sitting there and somebody's not coming over and saying, excuse me, sir, we need you for the takeoff, put your tray upright, please, and you need that bag under the front. Yeah, they ain't doing that.
Is that Shannon?
No. Shannon, by the way, very nervous flyer, just so you know. Very nervous flyer. Still have marks in my arm from a 500-foot airdrop over the Atlantic somewhere. But again, yes, the travel is, but still, you're getting in at 3 o'clock in the morning. You got to turn around. You got to shoot around, whatever else. I totally understand why, and I don't know that this is the case, but if the Pacers are simply trying to be careful for the home stretch of somebody like Halliburton who has had difficulties or challenges or problems from a health standpoint, and this is what they need to do to get there, then I get it. But we'll see what happens, because you would have liked to have gotten that one. They certainly, at times, it looked last night like they were going to get that game, and then Atlanta down the stretch made shots that Indiana was not able to make. I mean, it's as simple as that. Greg Kampe, by the way, is going to be coming here this weekend because Monday, the Horizon League tournament is out at the Coliseum. And Monday, 7 o'clock, it's Robert Morris and Oakland. Now, you might be asking yourself, Jake, he's at Oakland. That's in Michigan. We're in Indianapolis. Okay, look, the great personality, totally fun coach, always a fun conversation, and he sounds just like Michael Douglas. You tell me. I'm going to ask him that, I think. Anyway, he joins us. You said he's calling in, Eddie, is that right?
Yep.
All right, joins us next. Rolling through on a Friday here, Query and Company, and big weekend of college basketball, obviously. And then on Monday, things continue to be big. As a matter of fact, we've talked about it at the fairgrounds. The Coliseum, it's going to be the Horizon League semifinals. Finals are on Tuesday. One guy who is no stranger to success in winning big games, not only in March, but in Indianapolis, part of his now over 700 wins in college basketball. He's one of the great personalities in coaching, Greg Kampe from Oakland University, who by way of their win last night over Milwaukee, they've now won 3 straight, and they will be playing Monday night, 7 o'clock in the Coliseum, taking on the top seed in the Horizon League, Robert Morris, and he joins us on the always busy and available to be sponsored guest line. Coach, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
You know what? We are well. I would assume, I want to get into this because, and I appreciate your time because I know it's probably a whirlwind, although, here you get a couple of days off in the middle of a tournament, which I guess is good. Let's go right now to a year ago when we talked to you, and I think you're a really fascinating case in college basketball because you talked about just some of the challenges that were presented in your league and at your school with NIL and transfer portal, and you didn't know where you'd be a year later, and yet here we are a year later, and you find yourself back in a city that's been good to you in Indianapolis in the semifinals of your league tournament. How has it been just kind of, I'm not going to say rebuilding a roster, but just kind of getting to know guys, and are you now at the point where you finally feel that everybody has a firm hold on who you are?
Well, you can use it, though. I mean, because that's what we did. We have 11 new players this year, and I got 3 guys out there playing in the Power 5 that, are making, I think they combined for like $1.4 million that they made this year to play at the Power 5 schools. That if I still had them, they should have been seniors here. We would have been, we probably would have been a preseason top 30 in the country and probably would have won 27 or 8 games. But that's the new way of life, the new norm in college basketball. So we had to reload, and we do things a little different at Oakland. I mean, I play this goofy matchup zone, and it's not something you can just plug in. It takes time to learn, and it's been an interesting year because of that. But we're playing really well right now. I think we're starting to peak at the right time, and they're comfortable with the defense. We really played great defense last night at Milwaukee. To beat them, you had to have. And, so it's a great question because it's making me wonder, some of the things that we do. If I have to do this every year now, rebuild a roster like that, I may have to look at, doing some things differently defensively, offensively, and that because, programs like Oakland and Horizon League teams that are good, they build off success and they build off making players better. That's always been, I think, our biggest strength as a coaching staff at Oakland is that, you come in as a freshman and by the time you're a senior, you're pretty damn good. And that's not happening now. So it's a whole new thing that everybody's trying to get their arms around, and I'm just really excited that we made it to Indianapolis. I love your city. It's a great basketball town. It's I get to go to Burn and have a couple cigars. I mean,
let's go, right?
Right. Get some of the best shrimp cocktail in the country over there at I can't think of the name.
St. Elmo.
St. Elmo. Yeah. I mean, I love your city. So, and when you get to go to your city in our league, that means good things are happening.
Hey, let's go back to, and this kind of correlates, to be honest with you, in NBA terms for people around here that have been watching the Pacers. And I think it correlates to Oakland, so follow me here, Coach. The Pacers offensively at pace can be dazzling. They can score when Halliburton's rolling, they can score very quickly and in a number of different ways. But sometimes getting into a rhythm offensively in that fashion then creates a mindset where defensively you don't have the mindset to all of a sudden try to slow down on the other end of the floor. There's a challenge sometimes in playing fast on one end and trying to grind things down to your opponent on the other. Has that been a challenge for you with your team? Because I know you like to see defensively what you've done here of late, but at the same time you want to play at pace. Is there a balancing act that has to take place for your players?
Yeah, and that was one of the hard things for my team this year because I really believe, and I've coached I had a group about 10 years ago. We were really good. Went to 2 straight NCAA tournaments, won a couple championships, and we were one of the highest scoring teams in the country. We almost wanted the other team to make shots. You know what I'm saying? We almost, because we were going to outscore you, so we didn't want you to grind the ball on offense. We wanted you to come down. We wanted to gamble a little bit, let you get a couple easy ones. I know that sounds weird, but it's true. It's very hard to be a great defensive team and a fast-paced offensive team. It's hard to do. There are teams that can do it, but we don't get 5-star recruits. We try and get 2-star, 3-star recruits and turn them into I've had 5 NBA players in the last 15, 16 years. They weren't NBA players when they came to me. And, so you through growth and through, teaching and player development and things like that, they get better. And it's hard to play fast and play great defense. So, the last couple of years, we've been more of a defensive-minded program. And we want to play with pace, but then if it's not there, we want to use that shot clock. And, we want the game. We want you bored. We don't want you having fun. We want you bored on your side of the ball. And, anxious. You want to get out and go, and you can't. So, it's an interesting question, and it's one that coaches have to, juggle with, because we all want to score 100 points. But you also have to find the best way for your players to win.
Greg Kampe is our guest. He's the head basketball coach at Oakland. They will be, again, at the Coliseum, 7 o'clock on Monday, taking on Robert Morris in one of the 2 semifinals in the Horizon League tournament. The other game, Cleveland State and Youngstown State, will follow them on Monday. Coach, speaking of the Horizon League and Indianapolis in general, obviously there are some changes taking place with IU Indianapolis, not just the rebrand of the name of the school, but they've got a new arena now that they've broken ground on. Paul Corsaro just completed his first year there. What was your overall, just assessment of the job that Paul did this year, with also having to refamiliarize with the new roster and just trying to get a footprint there towards building a program?
Well, he was very smart in that he brought a couple really good players with him. Top Division II players can play now. Jack Golke was a Division II player, and look what he did in the NCAA tournament last year, 32 against Kentucky. And so he brought that Zelinskis kid in, and he brought Jarvis Walker in, and they won some games. They were a tough out. And he did a hell of a job. If Andy Toole hadn't done what he did at Robert Morris this year, I think Paul would have been the coach of the year in our league. And he deserved it. He really, really did a great job. I think he's breathed life into that program. I think that they feel good about themselves. And I think he's a good coach that's gonna do really good things there. So, it's good to see. You want your league at this time of year. You want everybody in your league to suck, right? You don't want them to be any good because you want to win,
right? Yeah.
But in November, December, and January, you want your league to be good. You want the world to respect your league. You want people to say this is a good league, and it helps you in seeding for the NCAA tournament. It helps you in your rankings, your net rankings, and all those kind of things. You want everybody in the league to be good. We want to lift everybody up, and so it's really good to see what he did this year. And I think that they're just starting. Once they get their arena, and once he's had a couple of years to build a roster, I think they're going to be in the mix, man. I was really, really impressed with them.
Bolivar is my cigar of choice, but that's not always available in the United States unless you're coming directly from Canada. Hoyle de Monterey No. 1 Excalibur is also great. If you go to Burn for really a Victory cigar, what's your choice?
Yeah. Those are really good. I'm an Opus X man, Opus 1 man.
Yeah.
I need to get a better job, though, to be able to buy a lot of those because they're getting up there in price. But the Opus, and just for a sit down cigar, I like the Ashton Churchill. That's just a good one. It's only about $14 too, so it's not that expensive.
The Opus X requires NIL money, right?
Yes, it sure does.
By the way, has anybody ever told you? I mentioned this after I talked to you. Greg Kampe of Oakland is our guest. I talked to you before the season began, and afterwards I walked away and I couldn't place it. I'm thinking, that voice, I can't place it. I can't place it. Have you been told this before? You know where I'm going with this?
Michael Douglas.
It's unbelievable. And you kind of look like him, too, to be honest with you. Like, are you a fan of Michael Douglas? I mean, he seems like a cool guy, right? You're a cool guy.
Yeah, I was a big fan of his, but I get it so much that, it's kind of like, ugh, I mean, am I that old now?
Well, I don't know about that, but I don't know about voice does it, you know what I mean? Like your voice doesn't
Right.
age per se, but now can you tell it, though? That's the question. If you're watching a movie, can you see it?
I don't, but I get it. I probably get it once a week from somebody somewhere. I get random phone calls from friends saying, like, there was this coach I met for the first time, and about 3 days later, I got a phone call, and this was a long time ago, and he said, I know who you are. I watched Black Rain last night. You're Michael Douglas. And I was like, God, I wish I had Michael Douglas's money.
Yeah, he's done well. Michael Douglas has done well in a lot of areas, right? And you're right. And,
Right.
But here's the thing, like, and you just kind of have that Michael Douglas coach. He has a cool vibe, right? You have a cool vibe, so I would soak it in.
All right, I'll take that as a compliment.
Okay. Lastly, I do want to get back to this before we let you go, and I appreciate the time. You've kind of been, I think, to a great extent, a spokesperson just for your league. You've won 700 games. You know the game of basketball, and college basketball is changing so quickly. And we've talked to you about this before. Is it a dangerous thing, or maybe even a slight, to say that schools out of leagues like the Horizon League, that maybe part of your recruiting tool is, hey, come here and be a really good player, and I have a track record where I can get you to other places where you're going to get that NIL money that maybe we don't have within budget. That's a dangerous thing to say, and it sounds like a slight towards an Oakland or an IU Indy or Fort Wayne or whatever it may be. But is there a reality to an extent that has to be kind of the strategy, at least for now, until things are balanced out?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, we're using that. If a kid's got more than 1 year left, we're using that for sure. I told you I got 3 guys making over, combined $1.4 million. And we're telling, hey, Trey Townsend got this amount of money at Arizona. You come and put up Trey Townsend's numbers, and I'll drive you to the airport. Because we know that if we get somebody coming in doing what Trey Townsend did, we're going to win. And now, once he does it, I might say to him, I might whisper in his ear, you can do this again. And I'm actually raising money. We're gonna be able to compete a little bit in the NIL market. We're not gonna be able to compete with the big boys of the world, but we're gonna be able to compete with the mids and so if they put up decent numbers and an Arizona or Kentucky or somebody like that doesn't want them, I'm hoping that I'll be able to keep them. But for sure, we're using that. I mean, when you recruit a kid today, his first 3 questions are, how much am I going to make? How are you going to get it to me? And when am I going to get it? I mean, there's not, let me see your practice facility. Who do you play next year? How many NBA players have you had? All the questions that we used to get. Can you win your league? Are we going to play in the NCAA tournament? All those questions that we used to get are now, how much are you going to pay me? When am I going to get it? And how is it going to get paid to me? Those are the first 3 questions I get. So, I'm going to pay you this, and I'll tell you what, you come here and you make player of the year like Trey Townsend did, and he got this at Arizona, Hell yeah, we say that.
Just make sure, Coach, that when you're discussing these things, based on one of your posts here on the X Post Twitter, as I call it, you said at the end of practice, you told guys to go ahead and make 4 straight free throws at each of the 6 baskets, rotate clockwise. You would have thought I was speaking Latin. Not one guy knew what I meant. Just make sure, I guess, that you don't have guys running in clockwise when they're trying to figure out everything that works into recruiting, all right?
Yeah, I guess these young men have only seen digital clocks in their lives, man.
That's right. The old Apple Watch, man.
Yeah.
Coach, we wish you the best of luck. They certainly know this time. They know it's 7 o'clock on Monday because in Indianapolis, you will be there taking on Robert Morris. And then after that, Cleveland State, Youngstown State. Perhaps you'll be getting the winner of that for Tuesday night's championship for the Horizon League, the Barbasol Horizon League at the Fairgrounds Coliseum. Coach, we always appreciate talking to you. Certainly wish you the best and safe travels to Indianapolis, all right?
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it. The Horizon League in Indianapolis is great, man. People need to come out and watch.
Appreciate it. Greg Kampe from Oakland, the Michael Douglas clone, but a hell of a basketball coach, over 700 wins, joining us here. Friday edition. We'll get back into it. We'll let you know what's going on Big Ten-wise when we return on The Fan. Greg Kampe's great, man. Big Ten women's tournament over at the Fieldhouse. Indiana was right there with USC, but I think USC just kind of got themselves some breathing room in the fourth quarter, correct, Eddie?
Yeah, as soon as you brought up the score of IU leading,
USC
don't blame me. Went on a 10-0 run.
Come on. You're going to pin that on me?
Yes.
Thanks. But again, the Big Ten women's tournament games being played right now, that's that game is going to wrap up here shortly, and I'll look at the schedule of what we have for the rest of the day. Now, as for Greg Kampe and Michael Douglas, It was the movie Falling Down where I was thinking about it. Now, we have a scene from Falling Down. So we'll begin with and so I want, obviously I'm not alone here because he said other people have said this to him. This is Michael Douglas from the movie Falling Down when he goes to get breakfast and unfortunately is a little bit late. But in Big Daddy, for example, Adam Sandler was just upset and shouted out some profanities, I think. Michael Douglas went to more extremes. But here is Michael Douglas from Falling Down.
Hi, I'd like some breakfast. We stopped serving breakfast. I know you stopped serving breakfast, Rick. Sheila told me you stopped serving breakfast.
Okay, now, perhaps the reason why the character in Falling Down was unaware of the time in which they stopped serving breakfast is because, like the players at Oakland, he is used to reading a digital watch and therefore misread the clock. I'm not sure, but here's Greg Kampe now.
Yeah, I guess these young men have only seen digital clocks in their lives.
Okay, is it me or do they sound alike? Go butt those two right together now and see if in any way, shape, or form they sound alike.
Hi, I'd like some breakfast. We stopped serving breakfast. I know you stopped serving breakfast, Rick. Sheila told me you stopped serving breakfast.
Yeah, I guess these young men have only seen digital clocks in their lives.
Okay, Eddie, yes or no?
I say yes. Even down to the cadence.
The cadence is probably the key there, right?
Well, their voices are identical, and
so you do
So
think
it's
the
like
voice,
everything.
So you find the voices identical, you say?
yes, I do.
Okay. Michael Douglas is cool though. Now you're not as familiar with his work, is that right?
I didn't realize he was in Ant-Man and in the Marvel movie, so I didn't realize that was him. So I'm familiar with him in that regard.
He is in a great TV show, if you've not watched it, on Netflix called The Kaminsky Method, which they did 2 seasons. It's he and Alan Arkin before Arkin, I believe Alan Arkin passed away, but it's really good. Really, really good. Okay, so Indiana and USC playing right now. The winner of that game advances to play. Now, I'm on the Big Ten women's basketball tournament bracket, and they haven't filled it in with results.
Well, there's still 3.5 minutes left, Jake.
No, but I'm saying they haven't gone to. I have the schedule now in front of me here. The other games today, after this game, it will be Michigan and Maryland, followed by, this is always the best, man. I mean, 4 games downtown. It's awesome. Nebraska and UCLA at 6:30, and then at 9 o'clock, Iowa and Ohio State. And I heard last night on the world's greatest postgame show, Eddie White talking about meeting the band members for different, especially like USC, and I think he said Washington, and asking them, you ever been to Indianapolis? Like, no. You know, some of the – now, he did – each time that Eddie mentioned Iowa, he did it in the Don Fisher voice, which was cool until the first 36 times he said it, right? Mixed in a little Bob Lovell, Don Fisher combo impersonation.
Oh, yeah, he does it all the time.
Last night.
All the time.
You sound exhausted by that.
No, I'm just saying it all the time. Nothing out of the ordinary. Just another night on the world's
Tonight's
greatest
the
postgame show.
perfect night. What's the weather? Do we know the weather outside? I mean, we're inside.
Let's see.
We're landing.
Cloudy and 46 and no chance of meatballs.
Yeesh. Because one of those nights, if you let me check here the forecast in the next couple of days, okay?
47, a chance of rain tomorrow, 55 on Sunday, 60s every day next week.
Next week, I'm telling you, everybody needs to come downtown for the Big Ten tournament. Everybody needs to come downtown. There are plenty of places to eat. You can go to Tom's Watch Bar right here and watch the games if you don't have tickets, or just go and sit outside, because one of those nights that it's going to be 60 and there's nothing like it. When the weather's perfect and people are out and milling around downtown. I mean, you can go to Coaches, you can go to the pub. There's a million places down there, right? But it's just the best. The atmosphere in general of fans, District Tap or Kilroy's or any of them on Georgia, and you got all these fans walking around from the different schools. There's nothing like it. You don't have to have tickets to get to the game. You don't. You don't have to have any tickets to the game. Like, just go down and hang out. and enjoy the ambiance of it. Literally nothing like it. I love it. Did you get a hold of Kevin, by the way?
Kevin who?
That'd be Kevin Bowen.
Yes, I did.
Is he joining us on the show today?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to get his take on the Jim Irsay tweet. If you're unfamiliar with it or if you're just joining the program,
Where have you been?
we will let you know what Jim Irsay had to say earlier today. And no one, when it comes to getting the reaction for things having to do with the Colts, is better than Kevin Bowen, who, of course, you hear on the morning show on this station, and he will join us. On the other side, we will get into that and more, including, is there a new pass rush specialist that could be in Indy? We'll get into that as well. fairly certain, and I'm not saying I agree with it, fairly certain this was rated by like Rolling Stone or one of them as the worst song of the 80s. Fairly certain of that. But I think it's kind of a jam. Let me tell you something. One of the great moments of my life was a couple of years ago during the IndyCar race weekend in Sonoma when they do the traffic report for the Bay Area for that song, driving over the Golden Gate Bridge with the windows down with Michael Young and Alex Wolff from IndyCar Radio and just blaring out that song while both of them stared at me, granted, and half of the Northern California traffic was like, who is the idiot in the rental car blaring out Jefferson Starship built this city? That song's a banger, man.
This wasn't earlier when you were going.
No, that was when I got the flat tire. When I had the flat tire earlier today. I'm telling you, there was a pothole the size of, I don't even know, this wasn't what caused it. I mean, like I missed the pothole and yet still ended up with a flat tire when I came out of, yes. I mean, there are a lot of them.
My head?
Right. What's that?
My head?
Excuse me?
Was it as the pothole, the size of my head?
Oh, no, nothing's that big, Eddie. Let's not kid ourselves.
Okay.
Joining us now, and I'm sure thrilled to be doing so. You hear him, of course, on the morning show here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan after a busy time of covering the NFL Combine. And it was at the end of his show today, along with James Boyd and Jeff Ricker, that you hear him, that Jim Irsay sent the following tweet. Jim Irsay earlier today with this, quote, 14 losing seasons as we enter 42 in Indy. Not, period, good, period, enough, period. 2 Super Bowl appearances, 1 win. Not, period, good, period, enough, period. Colts will be back. Our fans deserve better. That from Jim Irsay. Kevin Bowen joining us now to react to that first and foremost. Kevin, your overall reaction when you read that tweet?
Yeah, probably the first time we've heard from him in a football sense outside of a pen letter in, I don't know, quite some time. I did the math late in the year. I think the only time we heard from him football-related during the season was after wins, primarily. Not many tweets after losses in reaction to what had just happened the previous Sunday. So, in that sense, better than nothing. I'll be curious, he says, at owners' meetings, assuming he will talk here coming up in a few weeks. That'll be the end of the month. That'll always, or typically is kind of a big, not State of the Union's too much, but, one of the annual speaking engagements that he has. I notice a lot of times when he does speak, it's a lot of historical reference, and I think in that tweet it definitely starts out with that. So yeah, when you say, whatever it was, 14 losing seasons in 42 years, not good enough, that I think that sounds like more demanding than it really maybe is, because if you want to look at it, again, you're in the worst playoff drought your franchise has been in 30 years. I think one of the more damning stats currently is you're in a playoff drought that only 3 NFL teams are in a longer drought than you, which I think is pretty astonishing when you put it in that light. It kind of gets back to the upper quartile comments from a couple press conferences ago. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, if you really want to go back all the way to the Manning era, but, boy, that era was a long time ago. If you live in a little bit more present-day reality, you were in the bottom quartile of the NFL.
Kevin, I looked it up. One of the things that's interesting is, and I think a lot of people, in hindsight, it seems as though if you were to say to the average fan, Kevin, I truly believe this, if you were to ask people who have actively watched the Colts since '84, how many losing seasons in 42 have they had? I think most people would have guessed the over of 14. Because it feels like in the beginning years in particular, I mean, it was just constantly abysmal. Now, part of that, I looked it up. I think there were another 8 years, maybe even 9, where they were within 2 games of going under 500, where they were either like 8-8 or 9-7, you know what I mean, right on the cusp of it. But to me, the question that I would have in that, and I want you to tell me if I'm being too critical, is, yeah, it's an interesting thing for him to point out, but he's the guy that has the power to do something about it right now, and it seems as though there has been an acceptance of late of mediocrity. Am I being too critical?
I would say this. I think there is an acceptance of this new era being in the last 3 years, this window being much more of an open-mindedness to a long-term vision. And I think you and I talked about this last Friday, Jake. I thought one of the more enlightening conversations you guys had at the Combine is with Lance Zierlein, the draft analyst, and it kind of coincides with, us with Chris Ballard. And basically, I guess to speak from my show standpoint, when we asked Ballard, hey, why do you feel like you're getting the 9th year? I inferred that he pretty much said that, in 2023, after the Jeff Saturday, Frank Reich to Jeff Saturday chaotic nature of that season, they hired a first-time head coach. They drafted Anthony Richardson 4th overall, and there was hey, we are going to enter a period of time where it probably isn't going to be about winning right away, and it's going to be a little bit more of a long-term, again, window. And clearly, if you look at it right now, that window is at least 3 years old. We'll see how long it is. And then, again, you guys had Zierlein on, and he shared the story, being on the field with Chris Ballard at the Combine and whatever. They started discussing Anthony Richardson, and Zierlein says to him, hey, you can't draft him. And Ballard counters with, what do you mean I need to win now? Zierlein says, hey, you need to win now. And, Ballard says, what do you mean I need to win now? So, again, that to me is a little bit of a different tune than, how maybe we're used to Jim Irsay speaking, even if he all chips in comments. So, again, if you want to live in the reality, which I think it's important to do that, I think it's important to live in more of a present-day reality. The reality is this. Again, you're in your longest playoff drought in 30-some years. You haven't won a division title in 10. You look at the entire NFL. Every team in the league besides 3 have a longer playoff drought, or have a shorter playoff drought, I should say, than you. You could parse it down a little bit more into whatever. I think it's 25, 26 teams have won a playoff game since you last have. I think over 20 have won a division title since you last have. Again, when you start to look at all these present-day numbers and get away from, more of the historical data, it would be like a Notre Dame football fan 5 or 10 years ago trying to point to 73, 77, and 89. It would be like an IU basketball fan pointing to, 76, 81, and 87 and acting like they don't want to live in reality. I would choose to rather live in reality, which paints a little bit of a different story.
Kevin, you mentioned IU. It's interesting. We were just talking about things have kind of gone quiet in terms of the IU coaching search. I guess we can get into that in a minute here. And the other search, if you will, speaking with the Colts, if we were going to stay on that, is like the quarterback search. Do you believe that when they come out and say we're going to create competition and it's an open season, there is no guarantee on who the starter next year is going to be? Do you believe that? Do you really think if they go out and, if you get a Sam Darnold or you get a Daniel Jones, you've got to pay them money that they're going to expect to start? Are they in a pickle?
Yeah, I don't fully believe the open competition as much as, I don't know, now that we're on the college route, enter your college football program that has maybe more of a actual competition. Like sometimes you hear those words, what are spring practice? Here we go, open competition. Like that to me speaks a little truer than what the Colts are going to be in. And to be fair, I do think it's difficult. There is part of you that says, well, Anthony Richardson hasn't earned the right to be named the Week 1 starter here in March. And that's certainly true. I mean, his play has not earned that. But at the same time, there is a 4th overall pick investment. There is a preaching of continuity. Not only have the Colts not touched their GM and their head coach, C.J. Stroud's going to have a new offensive coordinator this year. There is nothing new about the offensive staff around Anthony Richardson. So they have preached continuity. Obviously, Jim Irsay, penned the letter that he did at the end of the season. And the quarterback is entering the first healthy offseason of his entire career. So when you add up all of that, I probably fall more in the latter of like Band-Aids don't work in the AFC. They don't. Sam Darnold can have a little bit of a season in the NFC, and Daniel Jones can go win a road playoff game. That stuff doesn't happen in the AFC. I mean, if you look at it, the last 2 playoffs have had the same 4 quarterbacks in the Final Four. It's a golden era in the AFC, and it's not that at all in the NFC. So to me, you have to have more of the high ceiling, again, draftable guy, however you want to define it, as your quarterback. And I tend to think your best opportunity, albeit a long shot, your best opportunity at creating that is that Richardson strikes some sort of gold with this healthy offseason. And again, I'm not acting like it's going to happen, but Again, first healthy offseason, he needs some fundamental changes. I view every offseason rep as very precious and important for him to drill that in. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then you start over. I don't think a Band-Aid of remember when Gardner Minshew went 9-8 and became a 8th alternate Pro Bowler, or remember when Jacoby Brissett did this, or Carson Wentz looked like that. I've seen it all. I don't need to see it again, just with a different name.
Kevin, do you think Trey Hendrickson is a realistic possibility to come here? Eddie had pointed out earlier, it's a very good point, obviously, that the defensive coordinator of the Colts now is a guy that just coached him in Cincinnati and Lou Anarumo. But I guess, elite player. I mean, 17.5 sacks. Is it a need? When you look at the Colts roster and you look at areas where they could spend money that they have under the cap, is getting somebody like that a need, or is it like going to Costco and buying an entertainment center because the value of it, the price was so good, it wasn't what you went there for, but you ended up buying it?
Yeah, I'd throw one more. That was a great point by Eddie, but I also throw one more on it. His college coach, Charlie Partridge, at Florida Atlantic, is also the Colts defensive line coach. So you have another layer of familiarity and sort of relationship with Trey Hendrickson. It's a position that's always a premium need. I would start there. And let's be honest, outside of a Justin Houston 1 year or Eric Walden 1 year, I mean, the Colts haven't had a pass rusher that strikes fear in the opponent from the edge in a decade. I mean, since Robert Mathis led the league in sacks, really. So I would never write it off. And, again, you do have some of those connections there that I think are important to point out. Now, having said that, it would eat up a lot of what you'd be able to do. And it goes back to the Richardson question that you asked me. I mean, you and I don't know if you did this on purpose, but you started by asking with Richardson, not Hendrickson. Well, I mean, that's because quarterback means that much in the NFL, and I almost kind of view it in that light in regards to the offseason of, you would love to get a Trey Hendrickson. He's led the league in sacks each the last couple of years, and, he's 30 years old, but you still feel like there is, a lot of pretty good football left in him. But, how much does that directly impact Richardson? And, for example, if you were to make that deal and the draft picks you'd give up and the financial, contract you'd have to give him, that would limit you the rest of the offseason. And then offensive line-wise, I think would be arguably the position that gets most, indirectly impacted by that. And you'd be, really in a bit of scramble mode, maybe is too desperate of a term to use, but I mean, you would have significant offensive line moves that I think would be needed compared to really any offseason that you've had. So I probably view it as not going to happen. I don't slam the door shut at all to it, but if you're going to do it, like Braden Smith, for example, is gone, and then what's the trickle-down effect? Does Will Fries price himself out of the market? Okay, well, I think a lot of people just assume Ryan Kelly would be gone. Well, does that mean you have a new center, right guard, and right tackle? What does that mean for Anthony Richardson in the most important year of his NFL life? I think all of these things are factors that you have to have. And I realize there's some people in the camp of, I don't care about all that. Chris Ballard's, never really swung for the fences in this manner. Do it. I understand people that, have that line of thinking, but, I also think you got to point out, how the Colts conversation is probably going and realizing that there is a little bit more dialogue to it than just, whatever. Here's our general frustration over the last 8 years. Let's do something just to do it.
Kev, who's going to be the next IU coach?
Well, I think they should. I mean, the name hasn't come up at all. At least I feel like it hasn't. But I think they should go after Shaka Smart. Is it going to be the Evansville native? Is it going to be the other DePaul guy, the Calvert Cheney High School teammate? Is it going to be your boy from Clemson?
Kevin, doesn't it feel like this? Brad Brownell is who you're mentioning, who's done a good job at Clemson. I think he's won around 65% of his games. That's not an easy place to win. They don't use a lot of NIL at Clemson, although they're starting to. They've had a really good year this year. They went to the Elite Eight recently. And, yes, Evansville guy. He has a lot of connection to Indiana. I know that there has been conversation of late or report of late that Indiana is warming up to Chris Beard and having a conversation. I will emphatically still say that I don't think that's the case and that I've been told Chris Beard would not be a candidate and will not be discussed. Shaka Smart I love, to your point, Kev. Brownell feels to me a little bit like the safety school, and I don't mean that as a knock on him. I think he's a very, very good basketball coach. But I think and I do think also that Brad Stevens, because of the pending ownership change in Boston, it's important that Brad Stevens, as I understand it, there are financials there that he would not be able to walk away from until a sale is final. And that would be the thing still that holds that up. I know that sounds crazy to say that could still be in play, but I think it's possible that it could. But that there's a timing thing there. Brownell, Kevin, feels like the guy that in the end is the safest. If Gardner Minshew is your 8th alternate Pro Bowl quarterback, you kind of go, really? But if Brad Brownell, without anybody knowing it, is your 8th alternate option, he's a pretty good basketball coach. And it feels like that would be one that may not move the needle, but would give stability within the program. I think that's a safe pick when it's all said and done. But I love Shaka Smart. I'm with you, man. Why wouldn't they go after Shaka, right?
Could you, not to interrupt, but I guess now I'm interviewing you. Could you expand on the Stevens part? I assume some of that, I hadn't heard that. Can you assume, I assume some of that is Boston ownership related?
Yeah, so here's my understanding, and I want to make very clear. I mean, I don't know this as fact, but it's been told to me pretty reliably from a couple of different people. And it kind of comes down to that thing, Kevin, where people are like, well, this is what I heard, but in other words, you start getting into nuances of like legal languages on things that become tricky or slippery. But I believe that at some point during his employment with the Boston Celtics, that there's the possibility that Brad Stevens does have an equity within the franchise itself that would financially compensate him upon the sale of the Boston Celtics, but he would have to be an employee of the Celtics at the time of said sale. And so he would stand to cash in once the Celtics sale goes through, but he has to be an employee at that time. So if they are sold tomorrow, that changes things in terms of his availability, but it would be in his best interest to not make any sort of a move if he had an interest in doing so until that takes place, and no one knows when that window is.
Got it. Okay. Wow. That is, that's super interesting. Sounds very complicated as well.
Beyond the intellectual and financial understanding of either of the two of us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Nothing says Friday at 2:00 like that. I would say the Brownell thing is interesting. He has some, he coached with Jim Cruz and he coached with Royce Waltman. I mean, there are a lot of old school Indiana ties to it. I mean, hell, you would know this better than I, but wasn't his name pretty highly thought of after maybe Sampson, right? I mean, I'm trying to remember all the coaching cycles.
He's been thought of highly, I think, for a while, right?
Right. It was maybe Wright State where he was.
Correct. That's right.
But obviously that list, wasn't maybe as, notable as some other times they've made hires. And, obviously Tom Crean became the head coach. So, there's part of me that looks at it and he's done a nice job at Clemson. There is an element of the pressure cooker's totally different, in Bloomington. Now, would he have a sense of that? Yeah, I think he would walk into it knowing it a little bit more than maybe some other coach. There'd be a bit of a, naive nature to, Archie Miller walking into it, for example. But yeah, I'll be very interested, how quickly this moves.
Go ahead.
No, I'll just say this. We're 2 weeks away from today, right? I mean, that's when team seasons can end. I mean, Dusty May, if I'm not mistaken, he lost on the opening weekend of the tournament last year, and then boom, off to Michigan. So, we are nearing the. I know there's been a little bit of a lull, but we are about to get that ramped up again. I know it's kind of awkward because Indiana has their biggest game of the season tomorrow from a bubble standpoint, but I'm just curious: is there anybody out there we're not talking about? Tommy Lloyd from Arizona was a name somebody brought up to me. I'm yeah, about that. I mean, I know his career is all West Coast based, but I felt this way when Purdue was trying to hire a head coach after Ryan Walters. I thought, could Purdue pursue any of the Big 12 guys? like Matt Campbell, Iowa State, or Chris Kleiman from Kansas State. Like some of these guys that have won, but like they're in the Big 12, and like that's not the conference that like you want to be in right now from a financial sense. I don't know if basketball is talked in that same light, but I mean, look at how the bids are about to be divvied up in the tournament. SEC and Big Ten are going to eat up so many of these bids. So, you know, again, Tommy Lloyd, I don't know if he's the best example of it, but like, is there the and maybe Brad Brownell in the ACC is one of those, but like, is there the ACC coach? Is there the Big 12 coach to where you can kind of, you know, I don't know, slide in there and say, hey, you've had a great run here, but you want to be, you know, at the front of the line per se with college athletics moving forward. You know, you need to try and come to the Big Ten or come to the SEC. And not to mention, obviously, you know, comparing Purdue football to Indiana basketball is a bit ludicrous. Like Indiana basketball, the resources, I think it's, you know, there are times I'm like, how do you not win just every year at Indiana?
Kevin, I think here's the thing. I think the two things that are going to hurt Indiana are potentially, first off, you've got to get a coach that knows the pressure cooker of it going in and knows and I know that, and I mean this with all love for Indiana fans, the passion of the fan base is both a blessing and a curse. And in a coaching search, it can at times be a curse because of the expectation that comes with that. And then in addition to that, the thought process with a lot of people now that with NIL, you can become a power anywhere. You know what I mean? If you've got the NIL backing and you are at, you know, insert name of mediocre school, you get enough NIL money in the transfer portal, you can build yourself a very quick turnaround. I mean, to your point, look at the SEC right now: Alabama, Auburn, Ole Miss. You know, and I know Chris Beard, we mentioned him, but you know, it can happen anywhere. Is my point, and I think that may cause Indiana to unfortunately be the program that guys use to try to get more money from their existing school and then stay pat. But we shall see what happens. Weekend agenda for you, Kevin. What's on the docket? Anything good?
Boy, not a whole lot. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Rosie's got dance class tomorrow. That's about it. I think I know we're doing the show Monday from the fairgrounds for a little Horizon League action. I think I will attend either the semis on Monday or the championship on Tuesday. So looking forward to that. But yeah, not a lot. Unless I'm totally forgetting something. Not a lot from boy. I can't wait to do this weekend.
All right, Monday, you are correct, by the way. The Horizon League, 7 o'clock. Well, you got women's games and men's games, but the men's 7 o'clock and 9:30, the semis happening over at the Coliseum. So you guys will be out there in the morning, which is very cool, and then there will be women's and men's games as well. Kevin, appreciate it. As always, have a good weekend, all right?
All right, have a great weekend, guys.
All right, Kevin Bowen, who you hear on the morning show, along with James Boyd and Jeff Rickard. Eddie, we have tickets to give away, do we not?
Yeah, with 2 pairs.
2 pairs. Now, is it 2 pair or pairs?
2 pairs.
I've always wondered, I guess pairs would be, is pairs correct or pair for plural? Is it one of those that can go plural and singular, pair, the word pair?
Yes.
Okay. You gave me a look. Folks can't see it right now on, unless you're watching on the YouTube, which thank you if you are. But Eddie gave me a look like, yeah, get to it here. That's basically what he said. Because we got good Franciscan, Good for the Heart, Feel Good Friday coming up. But tickets to give away for Pantera. This is going to be on September the 5th at the Ruoff Music Center. Is that right? Or is Pantera downtown?
You are correct.
At Ruoff, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Ruoff, which is fabulous because especially that, man, it's going to be perfect. Early autumn, I guess technically that's still late summer, 2 days after my birthday, so you got that to celebrate while you're out there. You can look over. It's always awesome when whoever's on the stage that time of year points out that if you look just over the fence behind you, you can see the moon rising. It's always a perfect, clear night in September, early September, and you get the tunes of Pantera. Like, what more could you want? And we have 2 different people that we're going to hook up with 2 pair of tickets each. We're going to do so in what fashion, Eddie?
Trivia.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You will do that right now?
Sure.
You'll do it on the other side when you want to do said trivia. I like the idea of the trivia.
Let's do one now and we can do one later.
All right, 239-1070. Are we just doing a cold call here?
Yes.
239-1070. When you call in, I will let Eddie decide whether we're going to do show trivia or we're going to do sports trivia.
I guess it's dependent upon how long the listener has been listening.
That is correct. Who do we have here that we're lined up for this award-winning segment, I'm sure? Caller number one, we'll go roulette style. Caller number one, you are on the air. What is your name, sir or madam?
Danny.
Danny. Danny, have you called the show before?
No. Long-time listener, though.
Danny, you sound like a nice fella, actually. We like to do a little segment we call Get to Know Your Listener. We've had a lot of success with this. Kids in particular love this segment. Are you willing to participate quickly and get to know your listener?
Sure.
Okay. Danny, if you don't mind me asking, how old a fella are you?
I am mid-50s, 56.
56-year-old Danny. I'm going to guess that puts you in a high school graduating class somewhere around 87. Is that right?
86.
86. And that was from what school?
Lowell Red Devils.
Lowell Red Devils. Okay. And you've lived in Indy then. Lowell's up north, correct?
Yeah, in the region.
Okay. And then was there a stop in between Lowell and Indianapolis collegiately, or you just ended up moving down, or you fell off the back of a turnip truck on 65? How'd you end up down here?
Collegiately, went Midwest, St. Louis area, and then ended up in Indy in early 90s. So I've been
I'm
here
going
a
to
while.
get SIU, Edwardsville, Wash U, Fond du Lac, SLU. Where did you go to college?
None of those. A very small Christian college.
Okay. And the name of it is?
St. Louis Christian College.
Really? Okay. St. Louis Christian College. All right.
Yeah.
Danny, would you like to do show trivia, or which puts you on the spot, depending on how long you've listened to the show, or would you like to do sports trivia?
Oh, wow. I'm going to go sports trivia.
Okay. Are you a Cardinals fan by chance?
I was when I was in St. Louis. I'm more of a White Sox fan, though.
Oh, listen.
All right, he's automatically winning, I guess.
Listen, Danny, you might have just won the tickets.
Yeah, he
do,
just
do
won.
you know? Let me ask you this: Do you know do you know any connection or story that I have involving the Chicago White Sox that I have mentioned on the radio before?
I might. I'm a long-time listener.
Okay. Do you know what it would be? What connection do I have to the Chicago White Sox, or in what capacity have I ever mentioned the Chicago White Sox?
You go every year to see a game. Something along that line. Am I right?
You are correct, Danny. Not only do I go, okay, I will tell you this. I set an alert to my phone on when single game tickets for the White Sox go on sale because Shannon and I go to a day game every year, okay? We went 2 years ago and it was 106 degrees. We went last year and we saw them. The game ended on an immaculate inning and I left in the 8th. Then they lost 22 straight after that. Then this year, I set an alarm on my phone. I bought tickets. I paid face value. And then the next day I checked, and they're going for $6 on the secondary market. And I said 17 different words that would have gotten you expelled from St. Louis Christian College.
I love it. I love the White Sox. I love the story.
But, Danny, I'll tell you what. You are on your way. Just based on that proof of loyalty to this radio program.
Well, and being loyal to the Chicago White Sox.
And the White Sox. Yes, that is correct. You're going to need a reason to get out and about on September 5th. Hang on the line. Eddie will get your information. I sincerely appreciate you listening. The trivia question I was going to ask is this.
What? Whoa. Don't say it yet. We've got another pair to give away.
Man, if somebody gets
Don't
that
spoil it.
question, though, I'd have been. It's a St. Louis-centric question.
Oh, you never know, though.
Okay, then I'll give it to you right now, and we'll just see if you can get it on the other side there, Smarty Pants. You ready?
I didn't say I could get it. I was just saying you may want to save it in case you have somebody who is
I have a question about a St. Louis World Series championship team that's one of my favorite questions of all time, but we'll do that next time we give tickets away, and it is a feel-good, good for the heart Friday next. halfway through the 2 o'clock hour. You know what that means. It means it is a Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday.
And we're halfway through the 2 o'clock hour everywhere in the Eastern time zone.
That is correct. Not just in Indianapolis, everywhere in the Eastern time zone. By the way, and there are a lot of things about this job that I enjoy. It goes without saying. People like Danny, he just seems like a fun guy, right? And the people that we get to meet and it's a fun job. It's not overly difficult. It's more difficult probably than it appears on radio, but it has a lot of perks and it has a lot of
like
things
working
about
with me, for example, the biggest perk of it all.
Okay, let's stop. In your case, stop while we're ahead, right? But I also think the job comes with some responsibility, and that is the responsibility of making sure that all of you are taking care of yourselves. I had a physical this morning. I was absolutely thrilled that my blood pressure was 108/78, and I've never really had blood pressure problems, but obviously, from a heart standpoint, I've had difficulties and challenges within heart health. I mean, that's pretty well documented. And I just know, and I knew at the time that I had a heart attack and survived it, that I had a responsibility at that point to utilize this platform and this microphone. And I am so appreciative of all of you lending me your ear each and every Friday just to remind you about the importance of that cardiovascular health. And the fact that the number one heart program in Indiana for cardiology by Health Grades and number one in Indiana for interventional coronary care and major cardiac surgery by CareChex is Franciscan Health. And Franciscan Health offers affordable heart scans. That's the first step towards that peace of mind of knowing that you are on the right path towards your cardiovascular health. Getting a scan for your heart is very simple. It's non-invasive, just $49. You can pay out of pocket. It comes with a heart health risk assessment, so they're going to give you kind of that roadmap as to where things are. But a heart scan allows them to see the calcium within your heart, see where the arteries are within your heart, and whether or not you need to start, whether it be just through diet, through exercise. I mean, those things are always important. 150 minutes a week of cardiovascular exercise is, a huge benefit. But also, maybe through medication to find out that you're doing everything right for your heart. Because the other thing that I want to emphasize, if you feel in any way, shape, or form like you are certain that you are about to undergo a heart attack or you're in the middle of a heart attack, call an ambulance, because they can come and then tell them you want to go to Franciscan, but they can get you started, the ambulance can, with the proper medications, the proper blood thinners to make sure that, and they can call ahead to Franciscan to let them know they're on their way to get the cath lab ready to go. Those things are so important. But there are always stories in sports that just simply make you feel good. There's so much negativity out there. I like to feature the stories that you hear about and you say, you know what, that's the reason why I follow sports, because of triumph. Sometimes because of people that overcome odds. We talked already so far this year about a young man with Down syndrome that not only now has, through the discipline of karate or karate, gone through and gotten the proper certifications and colors of belts and moved his way up by learning the discipline itself, but also opened the doors for other people, other kids and young adults with Down syndrome through Keith Boggs' gym to be able in Broderpool to learn the same discipline within that art. And stuff like that is awesome, right? We talked last week about a wrestler who thought that his career was done in terms of high school after 3 years, but despite having a college scholarship and maybe taking an early surgery that would have been able to allow him to be healthy at Nebraska right away when he arrived in Lincoln, said, no, I'm going 4 for 4, and won his 4th straight wrestling crown, which is awesome, right? Those are the stories we like. And then I hear about people sometimes that at one time faced adversity and now everything is falling into place for them. Like the story of Stacy Mitchell. Stacy Mitchell is not a young high school athlete. Stacy Mitchell is not necessarily one that you hear about because he scored 30 points in a game yesterday, but a trailblazer nonetheless. Because Stacy Mitchell has a 145 wins, 84 loss record as the girls basketball coach at Warren Central High School. And that's not to say that it's always been easy. Because in taking the job in 2015 to take over the Warren Central girls basketball program, he was taking over a program that had just 3 wins the year before, and then goes 12-12 in back-to-back years. Okay. Boom. 2018, everything opens up. Coaches the Indiana Junior All-Stars, but more importantly, leads Warren to a state crown. 20-7 record, as a matter of fact. The first African-American coach in Indiana to win a state title in girls basketball. And now, even more importantly, I think, because you're talking about the ability to reach beyond just the student athletes that you're dealing with after school or on a regular basis at Warren, Stacey Mitchell now named as the first black head coach for the girls basketball all-star team in the state of Indiana. And the state of Indiana will be represented now on the biggest stage in terms of the All-Stars in the Indiana-Kentucky series for their girls, with Stacey Mitchell leading the way. Somebody who set the example of when you took over a situation or you walked into a situation where things weren't necessarily roses, it doesn't mean that you can't see beyond that and look to the pasture of actually creating your own flowers around you and then enjoying the benefits of it. Going from taking over a program with just 3 wins to winning a state crown and now being a trailblazer and continuing to set the example, not just for African-American students to see, not just for the sake of girls basketball, but for all of us in the state of Indiana, of being able to represent Warren Central, Indianapolis, and the state of Indiana as well. I think it's great. And I think all the kudos should go, and it's going to be fun to watch the Indiana girls basketball all-star team, as they do each and every year, of course, sweep Kentucky. The most important thing, right? Also important, again, your heart health. A reminder once again, #1 heart program in Indiana for cardiology by Health Grades, #1 in Indiana for interventional coronary care, talking about Franciscan Health. If you want to find out more about getting a heart scan, it's very simple. Go to franciscanhealth.org/screening bundles. franciscanhealth.org/screening bundles. You could always Google Franciscan Health Heart Scan. Or you can call 833-238-0688. That's 833-238-0688. One more pair of tickets, Pantera, to give away. We'll do it with trivia next. Okay, Pantera tickets to give away. We're going to do this with a trivia question. By the way, my Cardinal, 239-1070 right now, if you want to call in for your chance to win tickets to see Pantera at Ruoff on September the 5th. 239-1070. I have a college basketball trivia question for you. And if you get it right, you will be on your way to go see Pantera. The Cardinals question I was going to ask Danny, which is one of my favorites of all, but it's really dated, so it kind of is ridiculous. The 1982 St. Louis Cardinals that won the World Series only had one player on the roster that batted 300 that year. And everybody's like, oh, man, it's got to be, Ozzie Smith or Tommy Herr, or, they go down the whole list. It's Lonnie Smith is the answer, by the way. But we would have been here until probably well after John is off the air at 6 before we would get somebody with the correct answer on that. I think this trivia question, and I might actually lead the witness a little bit on it because I'm nice like that. This one, I think, is pretty doable, if you will. Eddie is currently accumulating callers. I will tell you that it involves this. Currently in the AP Top 25 of college basketball, I'm going with the Associated Press poll, okay? In the AP Top 25, the top 10 teams are the following: Auburn, Duke, Houston, Tennessee, Florida, St. John's, Alabama, Michigan State, Texas Tech, and Iowa State. That is your AP Top 10 right now. Eddie, do we have a caller ready for the trivia question?
Yeah, we got two Justins, but this is Justin number 1.
Okay, Justin number 1. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
Good. Justin, how big a college basketball fan are you?
Well, I'm a Purdue Boilermaker, so
okay. Well,
where my allegiance lies.
Okay, here we go. Now, I want you, Justin, to think about this before giving your answer. And I'll give you one hint if you don't get it right away, okay?
Okay.
Of the following teams that are ranked in the top 10 in college basketball right now: Auburn, Duke, Houston, Tennessee, Florida, St. John's, Alabama, Michigan State, Texas Tech, and Iowa State. Of those 10, only one of them has never made a Final Four. Which is it? Now, for spur of the moment, Justin, if you don't mind me saying so, it's not a bad trivia question, is it?
No.
Where was your hint, by the way? I thought you said you had a hint.
I said I have a hint if you would like one.
I'll take the hint if you'll get. I got an idea, but
Go ahead with your idea first, and then I'll give you a pass here for the hint if you get it incorrect. Go ahead.
I'm gonna go with Iowa State.
It's an excellent guess. Not a rich necessarily tradition of college basketball, although if you listened earlier in the week when we had Mike DeCourcio on, we determined that I believe it was 1944 they went to the Final Four. I will give you this hint, okay? Your hint is, if you are a Purdue basketball fan, Purdue recently, and when I say recently, I'm saying within like the last 10 years, defeated this team in the NCAA tournament with one of the most unbelievable shooting performances by a guard that hit threes from everywhere.
He just joined our show like last week.
He was just on the show, yep. And it was in this team's arena where Glenn Robinson dunked on Greg Ostertag.
Greg Ostertag?
Don't go by that. It was in the NCAA tournament. They had a very distinctive floor. So if you remember that play, you would remember this. But more so go with this school played Purdue in the NCAA tournament in Louisville, and a guy from a suburban Marion County, Donut County, hit like 8 threes in the game and was unconscious.
I'm going to say that was Carson Edwards against Tennessee.
Okay.
He's half right.
Justin, you're halfway correct. But you got so let me ask you the trivia question one more time. Of those 10 schools, which one has not been to a Final Four?
Oh, man, it's killing me.
Well, you just said the school. I'm just asking you to repeat the school.
Tennessee.
Tennessee is the correct answer, Justin. Congratulations, but it was Ryan Klein, actually. Carson Edwards had a game unbelievably hot as well against Villanova, but it was against Tennessee where Ryan Klein went nuts. And so you are on your way, Justin, to go see Pantera. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Thanks, Jake.
Houston, by the way, one of my other favorite trivia questions. Houston, who is ranked 3rd has the record, as I've mentioned on this program before, I know. They have the record for the most Final Four appearances without ever having won a national championship. They have been to, I believe, 6 Final Fours. They went 3 times with Akeem Olajuwon. They went twice with Elvin Hayes, and then they have gone once with Kelvin Sampson. May well go back again. St. John's went to the Final Four. They've been to numerous, I think. But another great trivia question is the 85 Final Four featured 3 teams from the same conference, because St. John's, Villanova, and Georgetown, all from the Big East, were in the 85 Final Four in Lexington. And who was the interloper in that? And the answer to that is Memphis. Memphis State was the 4th team in the 85 Final Four. Hang on a second. Eddie, I think your mic's on, Eddie. Eddie's getting all of Justin's information live over the radio. Hope he didn't repeat his phone number. JMV has just walked in. He's wearing his fabulous Champagne of Beers shirt. You like that? That'd be none other than Miller High Life. John, busy day in college basketball. Indiana, by the way, gave a good fight against USC, but Terry Morin's group came up short.
Pretty good player.
Very good, right? What's on the big show today, John?
We are loaded. I've got JJ from Atlanta with that. I was so pissed about that last night. I told Eddie that I was going to be mad, and that's kind of how that thing broke last night. Actually told him that before the game last night. We'll talk about that. Talk about the Irsay X message again.
How about that?
I'm going to tell you what. I wish that they would just all stop the lip service and let us see something before you yip-yap about stuff being turning around and stuff.
Not good enough. We'll do something about it, right?
Yeah, well, no, really. I mean, anybody can notice that. It's like the fans knew last year that the tight end position wasn't going to be good enough. But that didn't help anybody over there. They knew that the secondary positions wasn't going to be good enough, but nobody over there understood that. So maybe the fans should be the ones sending stuff, and I'm assuming they do, to Jim Irsay and the Colts about what's not good enough and what they need to do. But we'll talk about that. Matt Miller's the draft guru at ESPN. He joins me. Who else? Don Fisher, voice of the Hoosiers, must win for IU tomorrow, buddy. How about that?
I think it probably is a must win. Well,
yeah.
Here's the thing. It's a must-win in the regard that if they don't win that game, then they got to win at least probably 2 or 3 in the Big Ten.
Then Ohio State gets a quad 1 win out of it, and they're a losing quad 2 at home. So, yeah, you don't want to jack around with that. That's tomorrow. Purdue, Illinois later on tonight, and what is going to be the inbound free agency coming up here. The Hendrickson stuff is killer to me, though. I mean, what would that be akin to Chris Ballard in changing? Well, like the Brady Bunch of that song when Peter was going through puberty.
Oh, I'm ready.
When he was popping some pubes. Time to change. What would be would this be the ultimate Chris Ballard change in what he talks about philosophically
I mean, that's
speaking?
the thing, John, is to an extent it's kind of waving a white philosophical flag, is it not? I mean, that's the thing. If you go, I mean, he's a great player, and he makes perfect sense to come here, but. You know, Chris Ballard has preached building that area of play through the draft, even though DeForest Buckner on the other
worked out great too, yeah. Right? Yeah. I just think this. For one, when somebody brings up draft capital, well, what about draft capital? Let's give it up. Why would they care? Because if their quarterback isn't good, they're done. Correct. They're all done. Why would they care about draft capital 3 years down the road, 2 seasons down the road? Why would it matter? Huh?
Leave a gift for the next guy.
We want to make sure we've set the table for the next guy. So
I'm setting the table for the next guy. His name is JMV,
I appreciate
and he is
that
up
very
next.
much.
Yeah, you're welcome. We thank you for listening, and we will talk to you at noon on Monday. John's up next here on from Query Company.